So I want to talk to you about surrounding about live fire training, both in acquired structures and those, both that, because I know that you do that a lot. So I thought I'd start with this question, just about, do you even remember the first time you went into live fire, like the first time in your career? Do you remember?
Yes. Yeah, it was in recruit school at the Washington State Fire Training Academy. So that was the first time I did live fire training. And yeah,
What
so
was
way back in the beginning.
Yeah, do you remember like the build up and what you thought of it back then?
I don't remember much of the build up. Recruit school was fast paced, pretty intense. I remember mostly just trying to get through every day.
Alive, not being kicked
And
out.
yeah, not getting fired. Uh, I remember it being very smoky.
Was it a little bit paramilitary?
Yeah,
Paramilitary?
yeah. Actually, it's funny now that you say that. It was even before my first experience with, I guess, I don't know if this would be actual live fire. It's live smoke, for instance. We back when I
Yeah,
came in, we went through what was called the smoke room in
yeah.
recruit training. And so like in the first 6 weeks of recruit training, you every 4 weeks on Friday, you had to go into this little tiny room that they had at the training facility, and they would light a burn barrel
Yeah.
on fire and push smoke down to the floor. And then you had to crawl in there, no face piece, nothing, and do like little tasks or give a little talk or something with the instructor in there, just so you knew what it was like to breathe smoke. And so the whole time you had your face hugging the floor, trying as hard as you could not to cough, because once you started coughing, everything was over. And that was fun in a sadistic sort of way. I would never do that with students now. I think it would actually give you a false sense of confidence,
Yeah.
given what's burning in modern buildings and modern
Yeah.
combustibles, because we were just burning hay and
Yeah.
straw and stuff. So, but yeah, that was the very beginning. But going back to your other question, the build up, I don't remember much. I don't really remember the fires very much either. I just remember going in, doing my, searching or dragging a hose line to the fire and putting it out. So I don't recall a bunch. And then
No.
my first acquired structure was also in recruit school, because in my department, almost every recruit class gets to burn in an acquired structure as part of their recruit training.
Which is just fantastic.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate.
Yeah, that could not even. I've even been around the world. I'm not saying I've been everywhere, but I've been a lot of places, and I've never heard that being used in that way. Not in the United States either. It seems to be fairly unique in the United States too, at least from what I've heard.
Yeah, it is fairly rare, especially for a large metropolitan
Yeah,
department.
yeah,
Some smaller departments that are very rural will
yeah,
do it more regularly because they have easy access to
yeah,
buildings. They don't have access to a training facility, and they have fewer challenges with exposures
yeah.
and local regulations. But yeah, for a big metropolitan department, it's very unusual.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I want to get back to acquired structures because that's a hobby of mine. But no, it is a fantastic learning opportunity over and over again. I mean, I know you feel the same. Like every time you do a burn, you go like, yeah, I'm learning.
Oh,
Uh,
100%.
uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, so it is fun because it is live. It's alive in a different way than a live fire training facility is. It's
Yes.
different every time. Um, in a way that live fire facility. I mean, if I go try and travel, I go to different live fire facilities, and they're different, but they're sort of the same anyway. And you're not surprised, but you are sometimes in the acquired structures,
For
and
sure.
sometimes not
For
in a good
sure.
way.
Yeah. Well, when the building itself can burn, it's
Yeah.
just a whole different thing.
Yeah, no, it is. It's exciting. So going back to, because I started when I thought about what I was going to first question I'm going to ask Ian, and started thinking about myself. Like I don't really remember, because I think I was 18. I did my military civilian military training. So we had, and we're going back to a draft system.
Mm-hmm.
And I was drafted. It was sort of voluntary. If you didn't really want to go, they didn't pick you. They only picked the ones who was sort of, at least didn't say no. So
Right.
I picked civilians. I went to an airport firefighter at a civilian airport. So it never held a gun or did anything, but it was sort of a little bit paramilitary. And then I did airport firefighting. I know we were down in a sort of like a bunker, smoked out with gear on. We did, of course, aircrafts burning and so on, and we did smoke diving inside like aircraft props. I just remember one that was it was sort of like a physical challenge. It was also a little bit, more things was loud. You basically had to work your ass off in an intensely hot building. I don't know what the temperature was, but it was, it's miserable. And you work your ass off until the air ran out, and you had to pull your mask out and find your way out. And it was smoky and it was hot. It was just a very small room, so it wasn't like you have to crawl 20 meters out. It was just very uncomfortable. That's why.
So sort of like a stress inoculation scenario.
Yeah, it was not fun at all. No part. I go like, think about that. It's better just to die.
What a great lesson.
Yes. I just prefer death in this moment. I don't have a family. What's the point? No, it is. I don't know if I don't know if the heat feels different to different people. That's hard to know. But I just know that if I get overheated, it's just. Yeah, I just want to crawl out of my skin. It's when I get to that point.
It is, when you're intensely overheated, it does something to your brain. It really, it sucks the life out of you.
Yeah.
The most simple things become so difficult.
Yeah. And I just know, we learned like a what's it called when you mnemonic?
Yeah, mnemonic.
Mnemonic.
Yes,
that's it. Just a hard English word. Mnemonic. When you put this, and then I go like, yeah, that's my sign, because there were different signs and different people had sort of different tells, and I just it was a very classical, but I just annoyed. That's first. I know that get out of here, fucking door. It's just ramming it. So like I know that.
Yes,
I'm starting to
starting to get overheated.
Yeah. But when you get over that, when you get to like the next level, I just go like. My body starts, I don't know, shutting down, but it's really, basically getting into flight mode where I go like, yeah, no, I don't want to be here. Like, it's just horrible. Yeah, we're getting ahead of time. But that's what I remember about training. But also remember, it was an aircraft training. It's funny because what you remember not, it was a guy. He was he was 173 centimeters tall. That guy, and it was the same height as where on the aircrafts. If it was higher to the door than that, there was a slide. It was lower, there wasn't a slide. That was 173 degrees, and it was called Nicholas, that guy. So I just remember forever. I remember that taller than Nicholas is a slide on the, because if you open a door, you don't want to get that slide in your head if you're doing an emergency evacuation. If it's below Nicholas heights, which is 173 centimeters, I just remember that one, like, because he told it. He was funny when he's told it. Like, they were having a laugh and they're like, oh, he's a short guy, blah 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 blah, and we're like, that I remember. There's a lot of other important stuff.
Whatever it takes, right? Whatever it takes.
Yeah. Oh, no. So I think that was one of my first. But so you went to recruit training. Again, it's hard to remember exactly. And you don't have any references about it being good or bad because you don't know anything.
Yeah, that is correct. I didn't know if the training was good or if it was bad. It was fun.
Which is not a drawback.
But yeah.
I don't have a problem with fun. It's good to be fun as long as you're learning something. I have a problem sometimes with being too serious, because serious and important are two different things. It could be fun but important, or serious, but not what's the word, solemn is when you go, no, it's very serious, you have to talk slowly, don't laugh because this is important. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, some of the best instructors I've ever worked with or taken classes from were really able to balance the serious nature of the job with the entertainment or telling jokes. I mean, I remember several instructors in my structural collapse class who are now retired from our rescue squad, and they were so good at laughing, joking. We're all having a good time.
Yeah.
We're really enjoying the training, and then flipping the switch. Okay, now it's serious. Guess what, guys? We're laughing and joking, but now we're going to lift this concrete block up, and you have to build the the system that's going to hold it up, and then you're going to crawl underneath it. So, you better do it right. And that ability to play those two sides was made training fun. But and the other thing too is we're all adults. I think sometimes
yeah, well, not
we
all
think
of them.
back to, well, yeah, but sometimes I think we think back to grade school where you kind of have to be serious, otherwise the kids go out of control.
Yeah.
But we're all grown people, right? And so you can tell a joke and then say, hey all, it's time to be serious.
Yeah.
And everybody can be serious.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. So do you think that skill, the skill they had, those senior guys, do you think they had it naturally, or do you think it was created, and was it created intentionally, or do you think there was just something that
I don't know if it was something they had intentionally developed over time. I do know that the captain of the rescue squad was very good at that and fostered that type of environment.
Yeah.
Among the crew members. And so I think they all fed off his example.
Yeah.
And it's clear when they were teaching class that the students enjoyed that environment. And so it wasn't, as a new instructor, you see your leadership doing that, and then you see the students enjoying it.
Yeah.
And so it's an easy example to follow, whether or not you're doing it intentionally.
Yeah. Do you think it's do you have a struggle yourself to find that balance between being a prankster, jokester, having fun, and being serious? Do you think you cross the line too much in either direction sometimes?
I think I definitely default to serious.
Yeah.
I'm not a good prankster or jokester. So if I have to do one, it's to kind of ease off on the serious side myself.
Yeah.
Give people a chance to laugh. So I default serious.
Yeah. No, I think that because I think I also, if I were to default, I think I also default to maybe too harsh sometimes when I do training. But I try to laugh, and I think that I'm trying intentionally to do that because I believe in that mixture too. But sometimes I might come across as too direct. Sometimes, maybe.
Yeah, that. I think that's almost different. Honestly, I mean, doing a lot of live fire training, which has a lot of risks involved. I think defaulting serious is the safer option.
Yeah.
Right. I'd rather everybody be a little more serious than they need to be.
Yeah.
But they're totally focused.
Yeah.
Rather than, because I've definitely seen the opposite in events where I wasn't in charge, where people are laughing and joking way too much, and you can see that things are getting missed.
Yeah.
And then being harsh, I mean, I think sometimes you have to give direct feedback, but just like they say, you can be harsh about someone's performance without being harsh about them personally, right? If most people, I think, want to know if they've made a mistake, and if you can say, hey, this thing that you did was a mistake, you're not a bad person, but this can't happen again.
Yeah.
I think those things I think most of us can deal with that.
Yeah, and I like to think, well, at least I try, to sometimes clarity, my attempt to create clarity and structure comes off as, if I'm not intentionally and really thinking about it, it might come off maybe as too serious or too harsh. When you want to, exactly, you want to create a very, because now things have to happen not just safely but also efficiently, because like, if say like an acquired structure burn, when it starts, things start to happen, it's hard to rewind.
Yes. Well, yeah, and as I've noticed, and I'm sure you've noticed this too, running live fire events, that you bring a bunch of firefighters together, and what's the thing we like to do the most? Just talk and catch up and, shoot the shit.
Yeah.
And if somebody isn't kind of the drill sergeant saying, hey, time to get back on task, we need to get this reset, go fill air bottles.
Yeah.
It's by the end of the day, you've missed 2 evolutions because everyone was just wasting time.
Yes.
And that can feel uncomfortable being that person, but I've learned to accept that is a necessity, and usually as the person in charge of the event, that's my role.
Yeah.
And I've also noticed that people don't mind, right? As long as people are getting enough breaks to recover and they're getting enough water and food, they don't mind being kept on task. They understand that they're there to do a training event, or they're there for work. And I think most of that as instructors is internal discomfort with being the person in charge and telling people what to do. And that, I think if you can get over that, what you'll realize is that most of the time people don't mind. And the people who really do mind, being on task and doing things the way they should be done, well, I guess honestly, I just don't care about them. They're the people who are holding the rest of us back. They're the people who and I'm not saying we should write those people off, but in the moment, I'm not going to address that.
Yeah.
Right now, maybe we'll meet later and be like, "Hey, man, it seemed like you weren't super motivated by the training. What's going on? What could we do better? Is there something else that you've got a problem with?" I mean, I remember a lieutenant that we had one time, not motivated at all, super distracted, obviously kind of in a bad place. And you just talk to him. It's like, hey, man, my wife is dying of cancer right now. Like, she's going through treatment. I'm barely here. And he didn't say it quite as clearly, but, you just tell the guy's in a bad place.
Yeah.
Right. And so I just told him, like, hey, man, just hang out in the back over here. And he was even worried about just being around other people because she was so immunocompromised. And I was like, look, man, like, you don't owe me anything. Just go stand outside.
Yeah.
Just get through the day, get home to your wife, and
Yeah.
Yeah. So
no, you don't see other people's baggages. So it is and I'm not a people's person, right? I struggle with that side. I am throwing stones in glass houses when I say, you just go up and talk to people, ask what's going on. Go like, I have to like carry myself like this. Do it, Lars. Do it. Just go and ask. Go and ask. What's the problem here? It's definitely not natural for me.
Well, and sometimes you bring in that other assistant instructor who's good at that. You're just like, hey, man, you go talk to that guy.
If it were me, there would be no coffee breaks. There would be no rest. There would be nothing, because I just feel it's a waste of time. People would just get annoyed. So that's not my strength, right there. Yeah, you're going to get getting back to acquired structure, because there's so much I think that's valuable there to talk about. But when you started, so what you went to recruit training and so on, and it's hard again to reflect back. And when I started learning more about sort of what I was doing and start having opinions about what I was doing, or being exposed to other ideas and so on, I couldn't really go back and think about my recruit training and go like, because I didn't really remember exactly which steps I took and what I thought and really what I did. So it was sort of a bastardized version of what I thought I did. But
Right.
when was the time? How long into the job did you? How long into the job did it take before you starting sort of going, hey man, things doesn't add up everywhere. Like this, it's not the perfect hill on the castle on the hill. Everything.
It wasn't until I became a recruit instructor. You know, like you said, when I went through acquired structure training in recruit school, like I mentioned before, I was just in survival mode,
Yeah.
right? Just get through this evolution, do my tasks. The bigger picture was totally lost on me. When I went down to become a recruit instructor, I became involved in the acquired structure training program.
Yeah.
And my first steps was just learning, okay, this is how it's done. And so I'm learning that. And then after doing it the first time, I was like, oh, okay, that was not what I expected. That sucked compared to my expectations.
Okay.
So let's start taking notes. Like,
Yeah.
why is this not going well? Start calling past instructors who'd been through the program, who I knew and respected.
Yeah.
And, you know, just putting the picture together. And then thankfully I had a training captain at the time who was willing to let me try some stuff.
Yeah.
And kind of step a little beyond my role at the time. And so with that experimentation, my opinions started to grow. And then I had some outside training experiences in acquired structures, which really helped reframe what I realized you could do with the buildings. And so I brought that back to the department. We tried some new stuff. Then I got lucky enough to start helping other departments do that. And it just kind of became this kind of virtuous cycle where in the department, I would bring back what I'd learned. We'd try the new things. I would go teach somewhere else.
Yeah.
Try the things we at the department, and it all kind of built on itself.
So these
but it didn't really start until I began teaching and organizing the events.
What made you go into teaching, or was it like, you know, or you're going to teach, Ian?
I've always enjoyed teaching.
Yeah.
It helps me be better at my job. Like my initial reaction was selfish, right?
Yeah.
I want to be better. How do you get better? You spend more time doing and teaching.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it gives you more training opportunities. Also, when you promote in my department, you're on the short list for an administrative assignment. And so that's either fire marshal's office, public education, training, and a couple of other options. And the only one that I could imagine surviving was training. And so as soon as I knew that I was going to be promoted, I went to the training division captain and said, hey, this is where I want to be. And
and then you're fortunate enough, it sounds like, to have a training captain and a training environment that allowed you to sort of try your wings.
Yeah, I've been the department that I work for, I'm very fortunate in my career, has become very progressive and open-minded about training. It has invested heavily, both in money and personnel in training. We keep up on the latest science from Fire Safety Research Institute. There's a lot of people who teach nationally who bring that experience back to the department. So it's very open-minded in terms of new ideas and trying things out. And so it was easy to get yes for an answer.
Do you think that, I'm jumping topics here, but do you think that that culture of allowing people to do stuff, because that's, I mean, organizationally, the easiest thing to do is to not allow people to do anything, because, you know, you're preventing bad things from happening by, you know, this is the standard, never go out of the standard. So do you think that was intentionally created, that culture, or do you think it was, you know, just happened by accident, or why do you think that it is that way?
I think it was an intentional outgrowth of certain leaders that we got. I mean, when I first came in, that was not the case. We did not have a very proactive or effective training culture. There were individuals in the department who were trying their best, but the leadership didn't support that, but then we had a change at the top.
Yeah.
And they recognized that the only way we're going to get better is by training.
Yeah.
And so they invested a lot more in the training division. They looked for those folks in the department who were doing good things and took their experience and placed them in positions to get that experience into the department.
Yeah. Do you think it's how do you think they and you deal with the fear of making something stupid?
Doing something stupid?
Because that is a big thing. A lot of departments are. They're scared of something, going wrong.
You do your homework, right? You do your research. So thankfully, we had a system for live fire training in place, right? So it's not as though I came in and said, "Hey, I want to burn in acquired structures." We've never done that before.
Yeah. It
was more like, "Hey, we already have the car. I just want to drive it a little differently." and so
it was evolution, not revolution.
Yeah, exactly. And that's much easier. And so at that point, I had built a good reputation.
Yeah.
The people in my department and my leadership and training knew who I was. I'd proven myself. And then the changes that we wanted to make, we made incrementally.
Yeah.
Right. We said, okay, we're going to increase fuel loads this much. We're going to change ventilation in these ways and see what happens. And we're going to take these particular risk management steps. We're going to put an extra hose line right here. We're going to make sure the students aren't as close to the fire. All those types of things. You don't just say, "Oh yeah, let's double the fuel load and see what happens," right?
You don't.
And as we built success, right, we were more confident making more changes.
Yeah.
And we started taking a lot of notes, and each step was progressive and supported itself. So
you started going again. You started with training, and what you had already then, there was acquired structures was part of that thing. So how was acquired structures when you started? How was that connection between the acquired structure and the fixed facilities you had? Like, was there like a red coherent thread, and then we do these things here, we do these things here because they fit better in like achieving the firefighters we want to build?
Initially, no, and it's difficult for us because we don't have our own live fire training facility in my department. It's the state's training facility. Okay. So we go there during recruit training and occasionally with operations companies, but they have their own set of rules that we have to abide by. So a lot of the stuff that we would like to do in the state facility, we can't do because of their rules and restrictions. For recruits, their introduction to live fire is in the state facility. It's much more controlled. It's just easier to control. And then acquired structure stuff is later. So
what would be? So when did you start to? Because you still have the same system. You still do. In that case, fixed. You do some part in the fixed facility, then you do some part in acquired structures.
Correct.
So if you were to say, what's the strength of doing things in fixed facilities? What are the strengths of doing acquired structures?
Fixed facilities is repeatability and controllability, right? So in a fixed facility, you can do all kinds of experiments to determine what fire behavior you can achieve with what fuel loads, with what wind conditions, with what, humidity. I mean, once you have a fixed facility for 5 years, you should know that in November with wet pallets and dry straw, I can achieve rollover out of the fire room and 5 feet down. But in May, I can cut that fuel load in half because everything's dry, there's no wind. I mean, that kind of thing, you can create very repeatable experiences to reinforce either learning lessons or desired behavior. And so fixed facilities are great for that. You can also expose students to specific conditions very, very safely, right? So if you want to demonstrate high heat conditions, so that students who have no concept of what high heat in a real building fire actually is, you can create various levels of heat, bring them in, expose them to that, take a minute. Hey, this is what we consider moderate levels of heat. You would expect this in a fire. In our typical fire, you shouldn't be surprised or fearful of this level of heat. This is the techniques you should use if you encounter this fire. And then you can create very high heat conditions, almost unsustainable. Just have them go in for 5 seconds, come back out. Okay, you feel that? Okay, that's your red line. You ever feel that again? This is the emergency procedure you should engage in. Don't proceed further, open the line, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And you can do that very safely. You can't do that safely in an acquired structure because the building will be burning around you.
Yay.
And in the acquired structure, you can demonstrate the most realistic fire behavior and smoke conditions because the building will burn.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you can just show fire progression. You can show smoke progression in a way that is more difficult in the fixed facility. Actually, after the fire, you can demonstrate fire damage. Right. These are the signs. We do lots of overhaul, right? Because of our wood frame buildings and sheetrock and lath and plaster. And so even teaching people where they need to search for hidden fire first is a huge benefit for the acquired structures. So that level of realism is the benefit to the acquired structures.
And the opposite, what do you think are the biggest pitfalls with live fire facilities in general? We're talking generally because there's a lot of variations, but generally with fixed facilities, and what are the pitfalls and problems with acquired?
I think when you do fixed facilities incorrectly, you can easily teach students to do things that are dangerous in real life. So in fixed facilities with retained heat, especially in steel boxes or burning long-term in concrete structures, you can create conditions where you have excellent visibility and incredibly high heat conditions because of the retained heat.
Yeah.
And so often students we're visual creatures, right?
Yeah.
We tend to perceive the heat last. You go in, you see minimal smoke, very little flame, and you proceed down a hallway, which is scorching hot. And so you just gut it out, get around the corner, put some water on the fire. Okay, you completed the evolution, you back out again. That was super hot. But what you've taught the student to do is to advance through conditions that were hot enough that most likely, if the walls were flammable, they would be off-gassing or on fire.
Yeah.
And so the internalized lesson is they get to a zero visibility hallway. They said, I felt this heat before. What I have to do next is to push forward, when that's actually absolutely the wrong thing to do. And so if instructors are poorly educated, you can teach bad lessons. It's also harder to generate realistic conditions in many fixed facilities if they're poorly designed. And so it can be hard to show students conditions on which to base their actions in a fixed facility. In the acquired structure, the downside is there are a lot of work, right, to do safely. And they're high priced because they start to degrade over time. And you only get them for a day or two. And then if you want to preserve them for longer, that's a lot of labor and materials in preserving the building. And then on the short term, they're more dangerous. If you don't know what you're doing, you can burn yourself up pretty easily if you don't have your hose lines in the right place. Most of our fatalities in live fire training, in the US at least, have all been in acquired structures. Yeah. And all the fatalities, most of the fatalities in fixed facilities have either been instructors or students who have been overheated throughout the day, not in a catastrophic one-time event.
Yeah. So when you started with live fire overall, and then again starting at teaching, those disconnects between what you saw, the conditions created, and the expected outcome. Like, well, we're showing this, but we're expecting one thing.
Right.
You imagine this is a one thing that a lot of imagine that there's smoke now. What would you do? Like when you started accounting those questions, like how would you tackle those? Like what how did you process those, and what do you think? Like, does this make sense? Is this the right approach? Is there something better?
What became clear to me early on is that when you tell students, unless they're tenured firefighters, when you say, imagine this,
Yeah.
most of them have a visual slide that they can refer to. But at least for inexperienced firefighters or new recruits, when you say, imagine that there's smoke here, that is absolutely meaningless. It's like saying to a blind person, imagine the color red. It's like, it just doesn't mean anything. And so if you want to teach a lesson, you have to refer to something that was actually there.
Yeah.
So if you have the no fire, no smoke, super hot hallway, you have to say, okay, you feel this heat? Yeah. If you ever feel this heat, this is what you do. You don't mention the other stuff.
Yeah.
And one of our best practices that I teach when I go other places is as the instructor, you have to teach to what is there. It might not be what you want to teach to, but you have to teach to what is there. Anything else tends to either confuse the student or undermine credibility. And if you want there to be different conditions, you have to change your burn plan, your fuel load, your vent profile to create those conditions. That's your responsibility as the instructor, right? And anything less is just it's not right. I wouldn't. Right. I mean, I wouldn't teach someone to swim by saying, let's go to the bathtub and have you sit in the water.
Imagine waves. Squirting water in the face. Right. Oh.
And I wouldn't tell you now you're ready. It's like.
But to be fair, that is I would say the majority of firefighter training in most countries, in most places, are more or less like that.
Oh, I completely agree. That's our experience here in the States as well. Yeah. And that's the issue is people struggle with how do I create the conditions that I want without hurting myself or my students.
Yeah.
And so
that's
what we try and teach people how to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is. I mean, I full respect for not being able to create the conditions that you like. At some point, everyone, no one, me and you, it doesn't matter where we are. Even if you had all the money in the world, you couldn't create all the conditions that you want, because it's sort of like a balance. It has to be safe, it has to be practical, sustainable over time, and so on. So it is, you have to at some point reach level. So I think that your mantra of saying you have to teach to what is there is a very, very good outcome, a very good starting point of saying that this is the. And now the problem, of course, gets to, so let's say you didn't have your acquired structure, which is, again, most people don't have, where you can add other things later in the training and so on. So when you start, let's say you have a burn building and you have a burn room, at least you can, we get to propane crap facilities later. But let's say you have a carbonaceous facility, but you have like most carbonaceous facility, you are somewhat limited in how much you can burn, because they don't want to damage the facility, or you don't want to create too much heat, or you're not allowed to do as much off gassing and much smoke and so on. So you're at least somewhat limited. You can do one room, maybe, rolling a little bit out in the hallway. Very rarely you could do two rooms, for instance, or let's say a bigger environment. So you're always, most people, limited in what you can do. So what do you do when you start to feel you're bumping the head into that ceiling and going like, okay, I've taught to what we can do. How do you synthesize the rest? How do you start doing the rest?
Yeah, so you're completely correct. We can't create all the exact same conditions that you would encounter in an
Yeah.
actual house fire, but we can often create conditions that are good enough, right? We need to create conditions that are close enough that they will teach the students to do the right thing in the right time, elicit the correct reaction. So in terms of limits, I often think, now this is first, I will often challenge the fixed facility individuals on why are these limits in place? So if the limits are in place for safety, totally understandable. Is there a way that we can mitigate those risks differently? So often we try and mitigate risks by reducing fuel loads. Okay, well, which are the risks that we're trying to mitigate? If we're trying to mitigate retained heat in the building, we have another way to mitigate that risk. We put out the fire and then we cool the building between evolutions. People will often say, well, then I don't get as many evolutions. Okay, that I understand that. But let me ask you, would you rather do 5 evolutions that are awesome, like excellent training, or would you rather do 15 evolutions that essentially have 0 training value?
Yeah.
Because oftentimes we're doing high repetition training that has no value, right?
Yeah.
We could do 30 evolutions but you're still not ready.
You've done 30
whereas
things very badly.
Yeah, but whereas if you do 5 good evolutions,
Yeah.
You will be much more prepared.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'll usually start with fuel loads and risk management. And often that's a conversation that people are willing to have. It sometimes takes some doing. And
Yeah.
again, it usually requires progressive change, right?
Yeah.
People need to see it happen a little bit at a time, build their
Yeah.
comfort because, as you said, the leadership needs to have trust,
Yeah.
right?
Which is not bad, but it's it's still, yeah.
Yeah. But when people talk about preserving the facility over time, I guess I have very little patience for that, because to me the facility is for training. If you preserve the facility for 50 years and all 50 years that training was essentially worthless, then why did we build this place in the first place?
Yeah.
The best facilities that I have trained at, the instructors understand that, like any piece of equipment, the facility has a useful life, and maintenance and repair and replacement are built into the operational budget. And that is something that the leadership needs to be forward thinking about. I mean, you would never, again, back to the car analogy, you wouldn't buy your car and then say, I'm never going to drive it because I might have to replace the tires. You just understand that oil changes, tire replacements, car washes, these are all part of owning a vehicle. And if I want to use it for what it's there for, we're not buying classic cars that sit in a showroom and we pull out on a summer day once a year, right? These are
some
facilities. Yeah, well, okay. Well,
fair enough. Some people do.
But these are live fire facilities that are designed for burning in.
Yeah.
And so, people should have that in mind.
Yeah.
And oftentimes in response to some of that stuff, I think people in leadership or other instructors, oftentimes they lack enough experience with high quality training to even imagine what is possible.
Yeah.
So when you say, hey, we need to do this better, they can only think of the downsides. And it's not until you can do a few burns to show them, hey, look what we can do with this building.
Yeah.
Look at the conditions we can show your students. And a lot of times when you do that a few times, suddenly the light bulb comes on, because they realize, oh my gosh, like I didn't even think this was possible in my building, or I didn't think it was possible to do in a way that wouldn't hurt people.
Yeah.
And so now that I see it's possible, of course I want to do it.
Yeah.
Because the leadership wants their people to be prepared.
Yeah.
Right? They want to serve the public. They want their firefighters to be as safe as possible operationally.
Yeah.
But it's just, and that's where it's incumbent on folks like us, who know how to do this well, to meet them in the middle, understand what their concerns are, and then show them how to do it well. Not just, hey, trust me, Chief, get out of my face.
That would be the easiest response. Get out of my face. So, yeah, and it is because it is a limitation that most instructors have for one reason or another. Like you say, you have for safety you can't do that, or for environmental reasons you can't do that. And I also. And I like how you're very diplomatic. I like that. You're very smooth. And
I just want to win, Lars. I just want to win.
Yeah, but I mean, going in and saying like, okay, so it's a trade-off. Everything is a trade-off. So okay, so you wanna mitigate that risk. That's not the only way you can mitigate that risk. Let's find a different way of doing that. So it's sort of like, and doing it incrementally and saying that. I remember I hired a training field once, and they had one way of doing like a demo burn inside a normal split level container, doing like a fire behavior. And I wanted to double the fuel load because I wanted to do this department they basically just had open doors during the entire process. And they let the, look at fire behavior, let it come down. And it was too hot that it just went outside. So when they heard I want to double the fuel load, they were going, no, you're going to damage the container. You can't do that. It's dangerous. We've tried it. You're stupid. And it took a long time before I was able, because I'd go like, I'm just going to close the door. I want to double the fuel load because I want to have a little bit longer evolution, but I want much lower heat release rate because I'm going to use the doors much more. And they were not used to doing that. But even if I did it 2 times, I was still shut down because they weren't there. I sort of nagged myself to doing it. But then they sort of go like, no, he's going to destroy it, so we shut him down. They weren't even outside looking at it, what happened to it, that it survived the first 2 burns. So I fully, and I try to be diplomatic and so on, but I fully understand that a lot of instructors work with what they have. You can try to be proactive. You can try to reason. But a lot of times it is hard. Like just to do carbonaceous is basically impossible for a lot of instructors. Just like this, it's a hard no. Like boom, you're not going to do it. It's unsafe. It's not healthy. Boom, you're not going to do it. But I also, on the other side, I know that fire instructors are not typically given the tools to conduct those discussions, or those where you can say, okay, so if we, for instance, if we limit exposure to the firefighters of carcinogens, okay, if we don't give them real smoke to training, what are the risks that are increasing because we do that?
Yeah, that's a good point. Go ahead.
Yeah, but that's where I don't think what you did with you going in and saying, okay, so what other risk are we creating by doing that, and how do we mitigate those? So having those discussions, I mean, most instructors are maybe taught to do an evolution like they've done it before by their peers, but they've never taught, okay, so if I want to change something, how does that process look like? How do I have to make new arguments for new? That's not easy. That's not something that just comes from within.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. I mean, people in these roles are firefighters. They probably got into this profession because they don't want to have to deal with that kind of stuff. Right?
Exactly.
And so I guess, it takes it as instructors, we have to kind of step outside of our comfort zone and look at, hey, what are my long-term goals for this program? And I think a lot of times we as firefighters have to be a little more patient, right? When I go out and help,
that's an ugly word. I don't like you saying that, patience. It's a naughty word.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I wish I had simple magic wand solutions. Just go pound on their desk
Yeah,
a few times and talk about how we're here to protect the public.
that always
And
works.
it'll be, I think, we as instructors have to step outside of our comfort zone. I don't think we have to ask all instructors to be that person, right? Usually it's just a lead instructor, someone like yourself or myself who's got a little more time. Rank always helps, right? You want to build that team. Hey, in
Yeah.
5 years, when you're a captain and you're a battalion chief, let's make that change we've been talking about. And like when I teach people our live fire instructor program, one of the things I consistently emphasize is, hey, remember that this program is for the life of the department. Like long after you are retired, someone else should be using this program too.
Yeah.
And so think with this long-term mindset. You're going to start here, and if I come visit you in 6 years, I expect your program to be vastly improved from here, right? And so that's hard for us as people who are used to solving emergencies in 30 minutes or less.
I've had this advice through the years, which I never follow. Like find enjoyment in the process, not the outcome. I think that sounds good, but I can't relate to that. It is a challenge. Maybe it's I think it's most humans are short term, goal oriented. Like it's hard to get a longer time frame and expect a timely process that has to have some ups and downs and sort of be fulfilled with the process. I think that's hard.
Yes, that is difficult. You got to celebrate those incremental wins.
Yeah. But we get because at some point because you're going back to that, I think that the tools because you have in the United States, you have these formal certifications like firefighter instructor 1 and fire instructor 2 and so on. But I don't think they would sort of give you the tools needed to, for instance, have those conversations, or do they give you a lot of those tools to make those things? I think they're very from what I see, and they focus on other skills to be positively oriented.
Yes, instructor 1 and instructor 2 in the fire service. I mean, I'll be blunt, and I've said this in many places. They're barely worth the paper they're written on.
Yeah.
Right. So the idea that I could be a quality instructor after maybe 3 days of classroom instruction, where I have to finish with one demonstration, and that gives me my instructor 1. I mean, that's ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
To me, that's the fire service creating a certification so that there's something written down to say that somebody has something, because a certification is great for ISO ratings. To me, there are certain certifications in the fire service which are worth something. Right. You get your rescue or your rope rescue certification. That means something because you actually had to go build rope systems, and you go to a structural collapse training and get a certification in that. It's likely that you actually had to lift very heavy things with airbag systems and build shoring and all that stuff. So it means something. And then there are certifications like instructor 1 and instructor 2, which are largely checkboxes, and which is unfortunate. So for instance, at least in my department, our live fire instructor has a much more robust system that we built out that requires mentorship and certain amounts of experience. And you have to be checked off by multiple individuals after doing lots of live fire training. And so it actually means something when you have it.
And it is oriented directly towards what you're supposed to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's more like an apprentice system rather than a formal, like a generic education.
Correct. Yeah, because all of the stuff that we do has huge hands-on components, right? Just the intellectual portion is minimal.
Yeah.
in terms of relevance.
Yeah. No, I think that I mean, of course, understanding something is important. Now, understanding can be brought by in many, but it is when I started traveling around and being exposed to different cultures of training in different countries and so on. It was a huge eye opener for me. I mean, on so many levels, so many similarities, so many differences in how in you know in the same department as you could see identical people in different countries, but you can see total opposites in different shifts also. So the variations within the systems are massive, of course, in everything. But being exposed to, that's where for personally, that was my, where I, went from, yeah, I think this is interesting, to holy shit, I don't understand this at all. Or that abyss open up and I go like, holy crap. Where you go, because you started challenge things you took for granted were not obvious anymore, about how to teach and why and how you build up the teaching and everything. Because you could find a system where you had, you need 2 years of training to becoming an instructor. You need to go to academy, and I still go look, but it's still crap training. Like it's not a prerequisite that if you do a long instructor training, that will give you great instructors. And you go to a place where there's no formal education whatsoever, and the training seems great. Like it was very hard for me to pick out, like, okay, what's the take back home then? Okay, if we only build like a school for trainers, then we'll get the perfect system.
To me, it's about the training culture, right? If you have a good training culture, even if you don't have formal checkoffs, you'll tend to have good instructors. They might not be as complete in their education as someone who has good training culture and a formally developed system, but they'll be good instructors. Whereas if you have a bad training culture, it doesn't matter how formal the system is and all the checkoffs, they'll often be meaningless, because you'll do the task one time with no challenge. You're checked off. And that's what I've noticed. Culture is so powerful, right? Bad culture will override a good system anytime, whereas a good culture will make up a lot of ground even if there's no real system in place. And we had a pretty good culture in place. The formalized stuff that we end up developing for the live fire instructor, that mostly just ensured that everyone got what they needed, right? Because it's easy sometimes to skip either the boring steps, or you don't take the time necessary to create the opportunities that don't come up very often. And the formal checklist will make you say, oh, hey, we haven't, John hasn't actually led students on a 2-room fire yet. Okay, so we weren't going to build that this time, but we'll build it this time so that John can get his checkoffs. Are the students ready? Okay, yes, they can handle it. And so John gets his check off. We create a good experience, and we don't forget that he hasn't done that yet.
Yeah. So that, of course, leads me to 2 very meaty questions. How do you define and identify a good culture? And secondly, of course, how do you build it? Yeah, because no. Yeah, because you start off like, well, I've never been to fire service in the world who thought they had bad training. Almost like because everybody has what they have and they think it's good. Typically, I mean, so everybody go like, nobody goes like, we have identified that our training sucks. That's very rare that on a department level that is the opinion. Individuals might say that. So how do you identify, like, what are the telltale signs? Go like, this is a healthy training culture and so on.
Okay, let's just be clear in my answer. I am not an expert in culture, in department culture. This has just been based on my experience and what reading I've done in the area. But in my observations, good training cultures are very positive, right? People are generally excited or at least very accepting of the need for training.
We are talking
Sometimes you
about
go
the
put
students or the instructors, just to be clear.
both,
Both.
both. Um, and people are good at giving and receiving critical feedback. So when people make mistakes in training, they easily acknowledge the fact that they made a mistake, and both instructors and other students do not condemn them for making that mistake. Everyone recognizes that training is where we make mistakes so that we can get better. When instructors point out errors, they do so in a way that is constructive, right? A poor training culture, when people make mistakes, they hide them. And when instructors catch you making a mistake, they call you out in front of the group and basically make you feel like trash because you made that mistake. You made that mistake because you are a bad person and you are a bad firefighter.
Bad dog.
Whereas in a healthy training culture, they'll point out the error, they'll try and figure out why it happened, and they'll do it in a way that says, "Hey, how can we improve on this? This is not you being a bad person. This is just an error that happened. Is this a fault in training? Is this a fault in information? How can we use this as a learning experience for you and the other people so that we can all get better?" So I would start with those two, that people are quick and easily share their errors so that other people can learn from them, and instructors provide quality feedback in a way that doesn't condemn the student.
Before you go on, just to make a comment, I would say that most departments think they have that culture.
Oh,
even though I would say they probably haven't got that, but I think most departments think they are. Oh, we're positive, we're great feedback because like we're good.
Ask the students; they'll tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Ask the students when students go and you just ask them, "Hey, do you think your instructor cadres are positive? Do you welcome feedback?
Oh.
Would you share an error that you made in front of your crew?" You get them alone, they'll tell you. So our training, my department's training culture used to be bad, and now it's very good. And I remember when we have the training facility, and there's a pavilion there that's just a covered spot where a lot of times we would do evolution debriefs. And when I first came in, it was called the Pavilion of Lies. Because
that's a good sign.
At least informally, right? Because you would do the evolution, everyone would do the debrief, and how'd it go? Engine 1, oh, it was great, perfect. Engine 2, how'd it go? Yeah, no problems. Wouldn't do anything different. And then the instructor would be like, "All right, so you guys completed the evolution in 2 minutes and 70 seconds. Okay, that's all right. See you next time." And now we have a culture where, "Hey, Engine 1, how'd it go? Oh, the hose lay was good. We had a little issue getting around the second pinch point because, it got caught on the door. I think I should have communicated better with my officer that I needed firefighter number 3 to bump up, but I kind of got distracted by this XYZ. And, how'd the search go? It was good. We had a good, effective communication with fire attack team leader on bedroom 2. Hey, fire attack, did you understand where we were? Actually, I didn't catch that. Okay, next time we'll make sure that we actually do that really close face to face." And so you could just tell the difference. You watch a debrief and you'll know if it's a good training culture or not.
So open, allow people to make mistakes, expect people to make mistakes, be positive, be constructive.
Yeah, when we were making the transition to our new training culture, we told people over and over again, we are here to make mistakes. We expect people to make mistakes. That's totally fine. That's why we do training. If you can't make, we make mistakes in training so we don't make mistakes in real life. Right? And as soon as you equate it to sports or any other area of life where you learn things, people get it.
Yeah. Do you think before we move on and more things about this, but do you see a difference, and especially when you try to change that, we'll get to more of that, about how that changed and how that is with newer recruits and newer firefighters versus old timers?
Well, new people are easy because they'll just do whatever you model. Um, Changing the culture is hard because negative training cultures lack trust, right? People don't trust, all their feedback has been negative. And if you make a mistake, you're going to get crushed, right? You'll be condemned by your peers, you'll be ostracized in the station. So you have to hide all weakness and all mistakes. And that transition is difficult. And so you have to, as instructors, you have to be very explicit about the change you're making.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to just call it out. Say, hey, we have had a training culture that's been negative. We want it to be positive. And so we are going to be making changes on purpose. And then no one will believe you, right? They think you're just
Yeah,
they think you're just fluffing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, just some buzzwords. Same thing, different day.
Yeah.
And so then you have to model it as the instructors. You have to find a few people because there's people out there that want that change,
Yeah.
right? There's people out there who know that that's the way we should be doing business, and you have to find them and then say, hey, we're trying to make this change. We're going to put on this training. We're going to bring you. Can we model this?
Yeah.
And then you as instructors, if you make mistakes in front of the students, and it's going to happen, right? You're going to run the drill wrong. You're going to trip and fall, whatever. You have to say, I made this mistake. This is why. And it's just going to be hard, right? There's going to be people who want to do it the wrong way. You're going to have to change instructors, right? Because you'll have senior instructors who've been around for a long time, who have been doing it the wrong way. And you're going to tell them, hey, we're going to be making changes. And they're going to tell you, no, we can't do that. You're going to make everybody weak. If we don't crush people when they make mistakes, they'll never learn. They'll always be they'll do it wrong. And you have to draw a hard line with them. Either you're going to help us make this change in training culture, or you're out. And so there's going to be a lot of hurt. I mean, it's going to be a difficult time. Somebody in leadership and that core group of instructors and kind of senior members in the department who are helping you make that change, you're all going to deal with a lot of flack for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And so you're just going to have to accept that that's part of the transition. But there'll be a breakover point as soon as people actually see that you mean it. And as soon as they'll love it, right? They'll love it. If for the first time they can go forward and be like, hey, I didn't really understand what was going on. Now, can you show that to me again? And be like, yeah, no problem. Perfect. I'll demonstrate it again. Or, hey, can you explain that point? And then boom, it's you won, because they love it. Like, to be able to come to training and just say, hey, I want to learn. And that it means that I don't know something. Yeah, people love it.
So how do you?
But you got to build trust.
Yeah, you got to build, and trust is again. I hate people, so it's very hard for me to both trust people and invoke
I love
trust.
how many people in the fire service, which is a people-centered and people-serving community, seem to say that they hate people.
Well, I mean, you can hate people, but like individuals, like people in groups hate them. Individuals, mostly fine.
Yes.
No, it is. So because culture is it's a very loose and and going back to the tools of the instructor, like when you start thinking about, I want to change things because you have some kind of vision. At least it starts with a vision. Like, there's a need. I see a need. We need to change this. We need to start doing this or whatever. Everybody, of course, is in a different formal position. Maybe you're the newest instructor, lowest on the rank, or maybe you're the chiefs. But it's going that, because if you don't have a good culture, of course, that allows change or even flourishes with change, which is very rare, then, like actively seeking out to change stuff, to try stuff, to have the guts to be wrong and so on. that is very rare. It's very hard to create that, and of course the atmosphere about when you say that, you know, like do your firefighters actually want to come there? Do they have the guts to say they were wrong? Maybe even want to say wrong. I think a great tell signs about having a good culture. Now, that's of course not enough, because you can have a very positive attitude, but you're teaching everything wrong. Everybody loves to come there, but you're teaching everything wrong. So what other parts are needed to create a culture where you actually produce good firefighters?
It's interesting. People often mention, and you said it just now, seeking change. And I think that's, I'm not sure that's the right way to think about it.
No,
I think what we need to,
yeah.
I think what we actively need to seek is more information, like to get better. And sometimes that means change, and sometimes it doesn't. I'm sorry, could you repeat your question again? I got stuck on that thought.
No, before I get to the progression, I totally agree. Change for the sake of change is, of course, useless. This works great. Let's change it. Why? That's what progressivism is about. No, of course not. No, it is, like you say, it is the constant strive towards excellence or something. That's a better way of saying it. Then that sometimes involves change. A lot of times it involves some kind of change because it's the status quo. So I agree. Change is a bad word to use. It's better to say, you know, we should strive for excellence, or we strive to get better, to be more knowledgeable, or because in worst case, it solidifies what we already are doing in a new way. No, my question was, so it's not enough to have a positive mindset. So you have to sort of know, okay, what we teach, is it actually good? People are happy, but we're teaching crap stuff.
I think that, that's why I was saying the thing about seeking information or excellence. I like what you said there. I think if you're seeking excellence and you're seeking constant improvement, then you'll hopefully figure out that you're doing things wrong, right? Most positive training cultures that I've observed, people have their head in the books. They're going to other departments or conferences to learn new techniques. They're reading publications from, the Fire Safety Research Institute. They are striving to improve. It's rare that I've seen a positive place to train where people aren't trying to keep up on information. So they might not know just because they're getting started, but they'll get there. I mean, for instance, again, to use my department as an example, right? The newest search study came out from FSRI, and people were, as soon as it was coming out, people were diving into it. What do we need? What are we doing that matches this? What do we need to change? And so the next recruit training, they were incorporating the findings in the instruction.
Yeah.
And so I've just found that when people have positive training cultures, they tend to be up on that stuff. It's kind of part and parcel.
Yeah. So you are,
unless they don't have. Sorry, go ahead. I keep interrupting you.
No, it's the same thing. This is a technical problem because there's a small delay, and that causes you to interrupt people even though you don't want to because of the delay. Well, so it is crap in that sense. Because it may mess up the flow in conversation. It is crap. Converts to speaking face to face. It's just much better. That's why the big podcasters also want to do it live, because the flow of the conversation is just much more natural. You don't keep interrupting each other. No, because I'll let you continue on that one, but because it's very important. Because I have I usually have a question when I do training, especially if I do longer training, like a couple of days or something, where first I talk about, what are your goals? How good do you want to be? Like, because at some level it has to be, if you don't want to be good, there's no need for you to be here. Like that, we have to establish that you have some desire to be good. Like else we are wasting time here. So, but the other question, I find this to be a big problem, because the second part is like, how good are you? Because if your goal is to be good, most firefighters want to be good, and most people in life want to be good. I think where the biggest disconnect is that most people think they are good.
Yes.
You know, so you are. I think most firefighters are unconsciously, most of the time, think they are good because they have no references. They have no idea that there is someone better than them. So they walk around with, I'm pretty good. So if I'm pretty good and I want to be good, I feel good about myself. And hey, I don't need to take this very seriously because, let's go and play football instead, or soccer. The one when you play with your feet, football.
I knew what you meant.
No, but it is. And I find that to be a big hurdle that is sort of hard to overcome. So with the exposure to information, what it of course did, it certainly did for me, was it pushed my confidence at the other. So I was at my expectation of where I wanted to be, and the crash where I actually was to go like, holy crap, I need to learn. I need to expose myself because I don't understand this. I don't want it. So the exposure to information was, at least for me, traveling around courses, was the fuel I needed to start learning. So how do you start to go, having a positive culture makes people actively seek out information and expose themselves to, maybe I'm not as good as I want to be.
Yeah. So generally when I'm presenting stuff, I just tell them what we're going to do, and then we do it. And I let them self-evaluate where they are. Now, for the instructors, what I always tell our instructors is, hey, everyone is going to overestimate their own ability. And so when we put people in, especially live fire training, your job as the instructor is to account for that. So you don't give them too much leash where they hurt themselves.
Yeah.
But with students, I think I would avoid saying, hey, you're here because you want to be good, or if you don't want to be good, you don't need to be here. Because then it's kind of like, well, I'm just here because my boss made me, right? I got assigned to this training. so I tend to just like, hey, what we're going to do today is we're going to do this type of live fire training. This is why we're doing it this way. I hope it provides some value for you. And then I try and make it as approachable and as sort of like, hey, safe as possible. Like, this is just what we're doing. This is what we find works. If it works for you, great. And rather than providing any, and let them do their own self-evaluation, because once they go through it, they know how well they did. And then I'll ask them, especially if they were in a position to perform, how do you think that went? Again, let them self-evaluate. And then, if they evaluate themselves incorrectly, then that's a gentle conversation. Well, okay, so you think you did awesome. This is often why we videotape things as well.
Yeah.
You can just pull up the video and like, hey, did you notice this? Oh, yes or no. And you kind of lead them gently down the path.
No, I totally agree with that. And it is, you have to, as soon as you start getting into those topics, you have to tread on ice very lightly, because it's very easy to go wrong and people put their both feet down and fuck you. It's my podcast. I can swear as much as I like.
I don't mind.
Well, some piece of America is just it's people get viciously angry if you like curse. Which is the land of the free. You can do what you want, right?
Yes.
the bald eagles come out of my mouth every time I swear. No, So it is. But I think when I have those conversations, I think I've become pretty good at it, because it's a loop where, okay, I want to be good, and then we go through whose responsibility is to be good, and the outcome is mostly that, okay, the employer can provide some resources for me, but there's always going to be a limit. Some departments can do a lot, some departments do a little, but whose responsibility to do the most out of that, that's my responsibility. And if you have if those two align, when you get to, okay, how good are you, and then you expose them to how good they are in some way, you can do training and be ideal as diplomatic as you are, and smooth, and go like, oh yeah, do you think your performance here matches your own expectation of how good you want to be? Like, oh no, it doesn't look really good. You want another try? Go like, yeah, I want to try again to get better. Like, oh, awesome, let's do that. Okay, that's super smooth, right? Compared to, you did it poorly, you have to do it again. Department policy. And they go like, oh yeah, let me go in. Like, if that sounds awesome, but it is hard to get to that position, because you don't want to be, I call it, training Hitler, where you go like, oh, one more drill. Nobody likes that, right? But if you form the culture where you go like, okay, we can either go to TV, or we can practice one more time. It's up to you to decide. This is your level of performance. This is where you want to be. You want the couch, or do you want to do one more evolution? If you sort of create that framing in a smooth way, most people will go like, let's do one more training, because my image of myself doesn't match what I see, and that hurts me. Like, it doesn't feel good. I don't want to go to the couch, because I'm not going to enjoy the game. But it goes back. The question is, those, how do you go back to those tools as instructor? Like, how do you, in that case, to build that healthy training environment, you have to get instructors that at some point learn to tread those narrow fields, where you create that sense of, we want to be good, and the instructor is more like a coach rather than a judge, right? And getting that. So how do you create that culture? I know you touched on it, but more about, how do you create that culture for your instructors and give them the tools they need?
It comes down to instructor education, which I think is something we often fail to do in the fire service. We teach people a lot of skills in the fire service, but we rarely teach instructors how to teach.
Yeah.
And so we make that common mistake that just because you're good at a skill means that you're good at teaching it, which is totally wrong. The example I always use is, how many world-class athletes go on to be world-class coaches? They're related, but it's not the same. And so departments and training companies, like, you have to invest in your instructor cadre. And that's one of the places that you start with that positive culture, is you model it within the instructor cadre, right? Hey, you're our next new instructor. Guess what? You have to teach back to me the things that we're going to teach the students next week. And so then they teach you, and it's way more uncomfortable to teach your fellow instructors than it is to teach the students.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you give critical feedback. Hey, when I made this mistake, the way you reacted was, made me feel a little defensive because of the way you framed your feedback. I personally would do it like this. And you just practice. It's like anything else. Teaching is a skill. And so you have to give your instructors reps on the actual skill. And, if you want to get deep, you can even act like a bad student and give them experience with dealing with that one guy from C shift who is going to be here on Thursday.
Let's prepare.
And so you have to invest in your instructors, and have to recognize that they need experience in that skill as well. So
I remember me being an instructor, and everyone has gone. It's been a journey of being an instructor.
Yes.
how many
Yes.
how many times I've not treaded that needle gently and get that and you instantly, well, I'm not saying everybody knows, I don't know if that's true or not, but at least you get that instant feeling of, oh, I said that the wrong way. That came out in my mouth not the way I intended. It sounded confrontational or degrading, or you know, like it wasn't the right time. But I don't know if you know, I do think some people are probably easier suited, like, you know, how many become great coaches to have that, maybe that sense of what is wrong. But I definitely agree to you that it is a skill. And in Sweden, I would say that we have no formal, or it's hardly any informal way of getting those skills. So there, it is basically, you have the longest beard, you get to teach, or you're the best at that skill, you get to teach, and hell and high water.
Right.
That's the only system we have. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So we are, and I think that most systems seems to be that way, or lacking at least a formal way to get to those informal skills. And we are, I've tried doing instructor courses and so on, but you know, lack of time, and also insecurity about, do I really have what it takes to deliver that in a good way? Do I really provide value? I'm blowing smoke up people's asses, you know, like, is this really good? Makes me also hesitant of doing these kind of things. So, and I understand that other people might feel that way too, but it is hard to create the foundation to create a cadre like that. And I know, how many instructors are sort of in your cadre for live fire training where you work now? How many people are in total?
So in my department, there's about 25, and then on the side business that I run, there's about 8 of us.
Yeah. So do you think there is a healthy number about where?
Yeah, I think it depends on the size of your department and the number of students you're trying to serve and the number of events that you're trying to put on, right? So it's kind of dependent on that. I believe in having a smaller core who has more experience, especially in live fire, because you want instructors who are able to recognize changes in conditions and unsafe situations very quickly and know how to mitigate them and deal with problems right away. And so I would prefer to have a smaller, stronger instructor cadre. Now, if you're dealing with something less dynamic, say you're teaching forcible entry or ladders or whatever, you could have a larger cadre because the skill set's not as complex and the situation's not as dangerous. But I think that's something each department would have to decide on how many people would be appropriate for that instructor cadre, because you want people to have enough repetitions that they're good, but not be getting crushed because, hey, every Thursday is ladder day, man, and you two guys are the ladder instructors. So that means every Thursday you're both here. And now that really starts to grind people down. And suddenly it's like, guess what? I'm not the ladder guy anymore. Yes, you're the only ladder guy. Nope, I'm not the ladder guy anymore. I'm not coming. Well, who's going to teach it? I don't know. Not my problem.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and building I tried to, and this was, I would call myself a junior instructor nerd at that time. I tried to create sort of a cadre at my department. I was unsuccessful, for many reasons, for both formal and informal reasons, and my inabilities and so on to create, because I wanted to create a smaller core group, like you said, where you had sort of senior instructors and have like junior instructors helping out, and create sort of a mentorship, but mentor-mentee relationship and all that. But in Sweden, it's so it's so foreign. Like we are like Swedish, which is part of the problem to do that. We are very we were very scared of or hesitant of any type of authority. Like hierarchies are seen to be bad. It's very social. It should be everybody's equal. Everybody, you're not better than me just because you know more. it is.
Well, that's as a person. No, I'm not better than you necessarily, but I'm better at this.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It spills over. This sense of equality spills over to like just because we it was part of a long, not just tied to the fire service. It's a culture in Sweden and many other I always call socialist countries, sort of, where you can, this is about being equal. Nobody's better than the other as a person. A lot of, on paper at least, nice values. And that spilled over towards everybody. Departments start removing insignias for senior officers and so on, and just even rank and everything is on sweaters. And now you in most departments in Sweden, you wouldn't see a difference between the fire chief and the newest recruit, because everybody has the same clothes and just a name tag. At a lot of departments, because of that, that will create a good culture because we're equals, we're everything. But it's just confusing. At least to me, it's just confusing, and it creates problems that shouldn't be there, and lack of hierarchies also creates confusion about where am I going? What's the point of me of trying, showing effort and, advancing and so on to do new things and so on. So to create a cadre where there were different ranks about junior and senior. And I know the first time I had a course, it was way before that. I was dabbling in becoming a fire instructor sort of at my local department. And we did some regional training and we talked about being an instructor, and I mentioned that there was a student-teacher relationship between me as a teacher and my fellow colleagues who then were students. And they were like, you can't call it like that. You can't call them teacher-student. They're your colleague. You can't call it that. And I would go like, but that's why we have a problem with that. If I'm as an instructor tell you, I think you should do it that way, and they go like, no, because you're not the boss of me. We're equals, and if your opinion is not valued as much as mine, so we had lots of problems that comes from culture, which is like, okay, yes, I can't tell you what to do, so I have to convince you. That was also very good, to give the upside of that, very good for me, because I couldn't change anyone just by telling them. Because I had even though even when I got up the ranks, I had not, but they wouldn't do it what I told them anyway, unless I convinced them. So yeah.
That is, yeah, that sounds very frustrating.
But it was but in hindsight, to look at it, it was a very good teacher for me, meaning I can't change anyone just by saying it.
Yeah, and that I agree that we should strive to convince people through logic and argument, and all those things that we've been talking about. Yeah. But there does come a time when that doesn't work.
Exactly.
And what do you do when someone is engaging in inappropriate or dangerous behavior, and they are your colleague in rank? Who makes the decision to say, hey, look, you don't get to do that anymore? Well, you can't tell me, like, how does that happen? how do you change policy that says, hey, we used to do these things and we're not going to do them anymore because we found out that they're not the most effective scientifically?
Yeah, well, I'm not saying the Swedish is a healthy system. I'm just saying it is a system. But
we've got our problems over here in the U.S. too, as I'm sure you know.
I know. I remember when I went to America first time and I saw the battalion chief in a much larger room in the fire station. I was like, wow. because in Sweden there was no difference. The battalion chief, room for sleeping was the same size as the firefighters and so on. It was just so different, and not in a bad not in a bad way. It was just different in that sense. To go like I was exposed, but going back to it, I mean, to take an example, I was standing on a training we did for the region, and we do the groups who came there were doing ladder races. And there was a specific time set for how long it could take to do a ladder race. It was a what do you call it? An extension ladder. So you have to pull it up to the pulley and then right against the wall. 2-person operation. Get out the safety legs also to get out to stabilize it. And the time from handbrake of the vehicle was 1 minute 30 seconds, and the ladder should just be positioned at the facade. Which you need to train to do that. It has to be from, get it from the roof, get it up in the right angle, right position, everything. So it has to be chop to make it work. And there was a full-time group there from a department next to us. It was a regional training, so there were departments there, and there was the Big Brother department. So larger city means typically around the world that we're better than you just because we're larger. That's the opinion what they say.
Yes.
So they didn't want to listen to me anyway, even though I was the instructor. So they did it in 30 seconds or 3 minutes. So it was way over time. And it's a very proud department. And they were going like, so I was telling them, are you happy with what you did? And they say yes. And the problem I had then was, I have no formal way of saying that was not good enough, and they think it's good enough. So then there's no more discussion. Like all my tools in my tool belt was gone, and
How about competition?
What?
About competition?
Yes, exactly. As well, a video. So the reason it works, the reason it worked. So what I learned was that when I did a video, and I showed them, and now most people when I showed the video, they would go like, that didn't look very good. So we're not very happy with that. Now I remember one stubborn group who did it like 2 minutes 30 seconds. They were like, we're good. You can't do it really faster. Then it wouldn't be safe. Risk of losing ladder. But then I prepared, because outside of that full-time station there was a volunteer. Not even volunteer in Sweden. It would be we call it räddningsvärn in Sweden. They're basically below volunteers. They're like, they don't have, they don't even get paid on calls, which is the normal in Sweden. You would be part-time. And they did a ladder race in like 45 seconds, something. They drilled and drilled and drilled, and they just nailed it. So I just took the video and I showed them what they did. And because I took away like their pride from their eyes, they would go like, okay, so you're saying that's not possible? Does this look not possible or good or unsafe? And they would go like, okay, just because I had
just got to pop that ego bubble. Boom.
I had to, because but that was my only option. And I had massive problems with officers. That was even worse, because officers, when I didn't have, even if I had the same rank maybe as them when I was an officer myself, I had to be super smooth in because they were, as soon as I said, like you should do it that way, that didn't work. That was, and again, looking back at it, it was a very good, it taught me to wrap my arguments very smoothly to get to the outcome. I remember, and I want your input in this, especially for officers, but how I was taught in Sweden, never how I was taught, how it was in Sweden, basically, adopting the system was, we did training and we did feedback. So we didn't really do pre-briefs. This is how it should be done. Let's try do it like that and then see what happens. And then we do debrief. Basically was, let's see what happens and then do debrief. Maybe it was just so. And then you're always, the challenge as an instructor then was always, okay, we have a lot of things that happened that I didn't agree with. Let's see how we can address those without people becoming defensive, which was always the problem.
And no, you're absolutely right. I mean, we're all humans, right? As my wife would say, psychology is everything. And so, if you got to appeal to people's egos, you got to preserve their sense of self, and none of that is cool skills stuff. And yeah, I think you're right. When you just start the training with like, hey, this is what we're doing, go for it. It's harder if you don't set expectations. Like, by the way, standard for this is a minute 30, and that's based on X number of repetitions and this, that, and the other thing. And by the way, volunteer company number 45 beats that time by like 30 seconds on the regular. So just throwing that out there for you.
A bit of healthy competition.
Yeah. Yeah. If only it were so easy to just say, hey, these are the skills we're showing you how to do them. This is the right way. Do it the right way. If only we were just robots that you could just download that stuff in.
What do you think? Because when I started going abroad, I was exposed more to like people, at least philosophies about doing it differently. It looked like people going like, oh, I think about doing this or this. Like how much time you should prepare before you do a drill versus how much you do debrief. If you have an hour, like you can, as instructor, you can say, okay, I'm going to spend 30 minutes on actually doing the drill and 30 minutes on debrief. Or should I put 15 minutes about going through how this should be done right, and then 30 minutes of actually doing the drill, then 15 minutes debrief. So that's up to you as an instructor. How do I, like, because some would go like, well, just do 30 minutes, you just do an hour drilling, and then what happens. Like, how do you think about dividing that time, about how to maximize outcome in the end, about showing how it should be done, actually doing it, and then actually debriefing afterwards in some way?
That's very dependent, I think, on the student body.
Yeah.
Right. So if I'm dealing with, and how well they know the system that you're trying to teach.
Yeah.
So in my department, we have standard operating guidelines for many, many procedures, and we preload training stuff on a monthly calendar, so they know what they're going to be doing Tuesday of next month. And so preloading, once they get there, can often be quite brief. Now, when we do the live fire training with an open class of students who've never done that stuff before, I'll spend much more time saying, hey, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it this way. This is why we're doing it this way, because it's very unfamiliar to them. And then, so that very much depends on how much the students know. Like, is this just your regular quarterly training that everyone understands the system? Do they understand how feedback is done? Then preloading, very, very short. And then debriefs, again, it depends on the complexity of the evolution or the drill. If we're doing simple ladder drills or, simple skills drills, there may be very little quote unquote debrief. You might do all the feedback during the drill itself. If you're doing more complex drills where you want to let the students kind of just do their thing for a minute, then feedback might take much longer because you've got to break things down. You got to figure out what people's motivations were, what was going on with communications. All those little nuances have to be brought out. And in those cases, I tend to try and provide plenty of time for debriefs, just to make sure everyone understands everyone's position and that they're on the same page. And then again, if you run the same drill 3 or 4 times, feedback's probably going to get shorter because all that stuff gets kind of worked out. So it's very situational dependent. I wouldn't feel comfortable just saying like, oh yeah, it's 20%, 30%, 50%,
I'm very sad about that. I wanted the formula where I can
Yes.
make a database and just feed it into the AI algorithm, and then we have a perfect instructor education system. No, but it's because
I'm not good
I
at
totally
that.
agree. Like if it is an easy skill, hopefully people know, you just go out and drill it, and hopefully there's not a lot of debrief through. Like you just have to do sets and reps because that is. But my experience is that most times I do train or did training in the department was that we want to hone some skill, or we want to try to do something new. And we my experience was we spent way too little on prepping. So
Yes.
we let people basically come in and try and do wrong, and then spend a lot of time on talking about what they did wrong.
Yeah, can I interrupt for a sec?
Yeah,
So,
sure.
I if you're talking about prepping for the drill, like not once the students arrive, I think as instructors you have to spend a lot of time preparing for what you're going to do on your own, right? Exactly. You got to figure out what you want the students to do, how you're going to set it up, what your logistical challenges are going to be, where are they going to make mistakes so that you can anticipate it and either prevent them if there are safety issues, or how you're going to give feedback. Yeah, you got to spend significant periods of time as the instructors on your own without the students to prepare the drill. So, for instance, we'll often, if it's going to be any sort of complex drill, we'll either have instructors run the drill as students, or bring in companies to proof the drill just to test it out, make sure it's good, the flow is going to go well. Yeah, you got to do lots of legwork beforehand as instructors just to develop the drill and make sure that it's going to go smoothly.
And that's where you would find out that we need to assign pre-drills to do ladder races, because otherwise that will tie a knot in this evolution. We need to make sure that they are doing their search in a particular order. So we need to do a pre-drill on that. We need to brief them really careful about how to interpret this situation. Otherwise, they will interpret the wrong way as we intended, and it will be an entirely different training evolution. You will find all those things, and that's what I was saying. That my journey took me from that I spent, in hindsight, I spent way too much time on debriefs where I struggled to get people from being defensive rather than prepping them to do a good job in the first place.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point.
Yeah, and it took a long time for me to get to that point, because it was so ingrained, because I was fostered in a system where we go like, oh, it's good to make errors on the training ground, we'll talk about it, and but most of the times people only got to do that drill once or twice.
Mm-hmm.
So they just practiced basically doing it wrong, and then we talked about how to do it right, and then they went home. And
Yeah,
and that was not a very good recipe for honing those skills, or that whatever it was. But that was the system. And I would argue that is a lot of training that's been done all over the place.
yeah, I think that's not uncommon, because it's hard to devote training time, and yeah, but sending people home on a loss like that can be hard for them.
It can be hard. It's hard on everyone. Because as an instructor, you go like, okay, I've tried my very best to be smooth and making good feedback afterwards, but everybody goes home with, that wasn't very good. And people, with the saying, you remember what you do, you don't remember what anyone told you. So people still remembered mostly what they did, which was wrong.
Right.
Especially we had that big, we are like, when part-time firefighters come in and do their, like in Sweden, you're mandatory have to do 2 live fire trainings, 2 hot live fire trainings a year, and 2 cold ones for like interior smoke diving. So, and that became, because of money and everything and laziness and everything, that became very repetitive. Like basically a factory. Come in and do some training, and poor preparations. Right. Just do something, and we'll talk about it afterwards. And every time they came in, check mark. But every time they came, it said, "Don't walk up too much. Stay low. You should have done this and this and this." It's sort of the same feedback every time. Instead of going like, okay, they're coming in and doing the same problem every time. Okay, how do you how do we prevent that? How do we make them do the right thing to start with?
Yeah, 100%.
But that moved a lot of the time for the instructor, like you said, for prepping, that we need to anticipate what the problems they're going to do. How do we build that out of the system? How do we send out pre-drills? How do we visualize what the correct behaviors are? That took a lot of work for instructors.
Yeah.
That they didn't really have to before. It wasn't very popular to do that, I would say.
Yes, being a good instructor is a lot of work.
Yeah. But I'm happy. I mean, when I started my journey, and it's still a journey, but it was fantastic when I started to go out and see that at least I was not alone on that journey.
Oh yeah, we're all going through it.
They find otherwise, so at least had the same deranged syndrome that I have, going like, no, that doesn't seem right. There has to be someone else going, it doesn't feel good. Now I want to also we've talked about culture, and that was part of my goal, to talk about culture and training and stuff. But I want to be more practical also before, I'll let you go and talk about some of the practical things about doing both fixed facility, but especially acquired structures, because of course that a lot of people don't do. Now, my first experience with doing acquired structures in Sweden, we can do it. It's not a problem. Some departments do it more, some departments do it less, some departments don't do it at all. You have to sometimes fight the environmental agencies to do it because of pollutions and so on. So you have to want to do it to be able to do it. And some departments are lazy, I would call it lazy, and they don't want to go through the paperwork and everything to do it. Some departments do it. So I was exposed to it a lot of times just as a firefighter, as a student. And it really, that was just like you said, that was one of the aha moments when you go like, well, this is not like the fixed facility.
Right.
This is, and I know when I started, because in Sweden there's no formal education, we don't have 1403. There's basically nothing that you can start off. Not even that something bad you can start off. Like there's no starting ground. So when I started,
do whatever you want.
but basically you could do, and I was started like this. But what would your reaction be if fire chief or fire someone calls you, your training department, your training agency, and they say, hey, we're going to do an acquired structure burn. We got a building here we think that are suitable. We're going to do, light a fire, and then we're going to do, the crew's going to wait on, 2 minutes out with the fire truck, and going to light a fire and house, let it rip for, a couple of minutes. And then we're going to do there and do a fire attack. Can you just come there and, give us a hand on prepping that fire, that training session with that house? How would you tackle that phone call?
I would say, sure. I'm always happy to help out with acquired structure live fire.
Yeah.
But the conversation I would have is, what do you want the students to get out of the live fire training? And I would argue that, especially when you're dealing with acquired structures, like we said before, the huge benefit with the acquired structures is the realism of presentation, right? Because it's an actual building that's on fire. And so my argument always is that in any fire behavior class or any firefighting class with live fire, fixed facility, or acquired structure, the primary focus should be on the fire behavior itself. And so I always, with acquired structures specifically, try and remove all pieces of the fire response, right? We always have hose lines pre-positioned, or almost always have hose lines pre-positioned. We have the response. There's no responding in, because all the responding in, pulling hose lines, masking up, all that stuff can be drilled anytime, anywhere, and to a supremely high level of skill without live fire. The only thing that we can't simulate is the actual live fire itself. And so, especially in a fixed facility, or not a fixed facility, excuse me, in an acquired structure where we only get it for a certain number of burns, what we have to focus on is the fire behavior. And so when you do a fire attack, the only people who actually engage with fire behavior on the inside is maybe the nozzle and maybe the search crew. Everyone else is task loaded. So they're principally focused on accomplishing their task. They're not focused on the fire behavior. So what we need to do is remove the task load, pre-position all your hose lines, all that stuff, and focus on fire behavior. So what we're trying to do is build cues and context for the skills that the students already know. We told them and we showed them, and they've practiced how to apply water inside this burning building. But they don't have a lot of slides for what that looks like, feels like, sounds like inside a real burning building. So you just put them inside the burning building, have them watch the fire grow, nozzles in their hand, and you say, okay, now we've reached the condition that we want. Okay, attack the fire. Maybe we don't even put it out. We let it regrow again so we can see that condition a couple of times. Because if you start them outside, you light the bedroom on fire, it gets ripping, and then they just show up. Well, they haven't seen all those intermediary growth stages inside. And so they only get to experience the fire at one stage of growth. You put them inside, they watch it from ignition to extinguishment. Well, now they've watched 17, 20 different fires all in one fire. They watch the incipient stage fire. They watch the rooms halfway involved. They watch the room flash over. They watch the hallway get involved. They watch rollover. So they watched a million different fires just in one fire. And so when they show up to an early stage growth fire, they say to themselves, oh yeah, I've seen that before. They show up to a room that's post flash, but it's not involving the hallway. I've seen that before. They show, so you could see so many different fires in one fire. Whereas if you just have them respond in, well, they only get one fire from one perspective. And so you got to take all that stuff away and focus on just the fire itself. That's all that matters.
So beautiful. It's so beautiful.
Sorry, I went on a rant there for a bit.
It's so beautiful. No, but I was pretty, because that was my first encounters with acquired structures. Like when I started burning for my colleagues, set a fire and they would respond, and it wasn't more like sometimes that turned out great with all the limited learning that was accomplished compared to what you described. And sometimes go like, yeah, great fire. It was great until, before you got here, but now it's too late. And
the other thing too, that when you do it that way, where you have them respond in, is that they're much harder to control.
It's super
much harder to control. Either they show up too early, and it's like, yeah, that kind of sucked.
Yeah.
Or they show up too late and you're like, well, I guess we only get 2 fires this time.
No, but I think it's excellent, because when I started teaching, I also, as a nerd, I tried to find all the acquired structure burn, because I saw the values, and I was like, can I come to your acquired structure burn and be a fly on the wall? Like, I'll be outside if you can, but if you let me inside, I'll be even happier. Like, I'll take a lot of cameras with me. I can share the video footage, so it's like a win-win. So my learning was just first exposure to all of those, like tons of bad behaviors, I would say. But it was fun. It was super fun. The learnings for me were massive, both about fire behavior and about suppression, but also how you saw those tendencies, like after 10 failed acquired structure burns, where that kind of training failed for one reason or another. You go like, this cannot be the way to do it. And I don't know if I knew this was before I knew you existed and so on, but I saw a training, but on a fixed facility, where they had sort of I started thinking about it more as a fixed facility, about, okay, what are the things actually important here? And I started dabbling with those, dividing take away, you described it perfectly. You take away the task levels and go like, what are the things that are actually unique about doing acquired structure burns? And this is about watching the fire behavior and playing with the fire behavior in a way we can't do in acquired, in a real, seeing the development, seeing what happened with different suppression media. So we're playing a lot with, you know, fog nails and dry chem and different types of nozzle techniques and cobras and everything. Go like to be able to show them the effects of different techniques, which you can't do on the fixed facility because it doesn't react in the same way.
Right.
And then it was super interesting to when I finally started, you know, you started dabbling on social media and talking about podcasts and everything. Go like, that's the person who thinks like me in terms of creating different stations. Okay, we have stations here, like, you know, this is outside the hallway. They're watching fire behavior. We have one team that's further away. They're looking at conditions in the hallway further away from the fire. We have one team on the outside looking at outside cues, what's happening here. And then you rotate and see, go like, because you're trying to maximize without overcrowding. But I want to get to that. So when you, as you smoothly described to that fire chief that, hey, can we, you know, take away the task level and focus on looking at actual unique things about fire? How would you try to organize that? That would say, oh God, these are the most important things for us to get right for this to be effective in terms of that and safe. Like, what are some of the key, like, puzzle bricks and puzzle pieces and how to make that work?
Yeah, so you mentioned one of them right off the bat, which is overcrowding. So often people want to stick as many people as they can inside the building, which makes sense. Of course, we all want to see what's happening inside, but it easily leads to overcrowding, especially once everyone has all their gear on.
Yeah.
Suddenly a doorway gets real narrow when 8 firefighters in gear and helmets all want to get through it when they're crouching down. So you have to be really diligent about not overcrowding or creating additional exiting, right? Yeah. Several times we've cut down windows and made them into doors in bedrooms. So suddenly we've got 4 ways out of the building instead of just the front door. The other thing is you got to have hose lines in position to protect the students on the inside, right? When things go wrong, there has to be an instructor on a hose line who can put the fire out or at least control it in case there's an issue with a student. The other thing is no one is in the fire room after early ignition. So in fixed facilities, it's common and easy to create a fire in the corner of a big open room, and you can create rollover. Obviously, this is in a facility where you're burning wood-based fuels. Yeah. And then you could put rollover and smoke over the students' heads. It's a great demonstration. It's good for familiarity. You cannot do that in acquired structures. That is too dangerous.
It goes from nice to holy crap really fast.
Yes, that is exactly how I like to say it. Yeah,
I learned the hard way.
Yes, myself included. I've got a great video of myself and some students almost dying in a flashover.
Yeah. So it's surprising, and I would follow up with, even though after you burn lots of houses, it's still surprising how fast it can go sometimes.
Yeah,
I'm very often go like, I think this is going to happen, and I usually tell the students that I would try to be very upfront. This is going to happen, but let's see. And after I go like, holy crap, that went faster because there was some kind of paint on the wall that was, you know, like, just ripped it off so fast or whatever it might be. And sometimes you go like, this is taking forever.
Yeah, just retained water. Yeah. You know, you just can slow things way down. Yeah. And the other thing too, with students inside the room where the fire is that big rooms are not safer, right? In a fixed facility, a large room is fairly safe to put the students with the fire, because you've got distance, you can get low, you can stay away from the fire, you don't get overheated. But a large room in an acquired structure will flash just as fast as a small room if it's dry. And it has a lot of energy.
The only time I would consider that, of course, if it's a very good access, but if it's sort of a room where you have a big, really good header, so it is sort of half divided, at least on the up part. So some parts you find a really big header, then you can allow a little bit more time because there's some separation. But otherwise, totally agree. Like it's surprisingly how fast it turns to this is not good. The value of staying inside the room to that point is very limited.
Yes.
Both because I go like you're not sitting inside the room when you're getting to a fire. You're always going to be from the adjacent compartment. You're always on the path because if you're inside the room, you should always put it out. You should have put some water on it, at least with my context, also because nobody goes out without a hose line. We don't have search crews without it. So for us, it's go like you would never be inside the fire compartment without actually putting the fire out. So most of the value comes from the path to the fire, be sitting just outside the fire compartment, for instance.
Yeah, you just you took the words right out of my mouth. That's what I tell people all the time, is that once the nozzle makes it to the fire room, the game is over, right? You won. The challenging part is from the door to the fire room. So that's where we need to put the students.
Yeah.
And then mostly after that, it's stressing that you don't task load people. In the States, we have a common culture of searching without a hose line, either ahead or behind the hose line. And so people often want to engage in search drills in these buildings, but what you got to realize is that, again, we're not working search skills, we're working recognition of fire dynamics and how those change based on ventilation, water application, things like that. So you can move people around in the building, open and close doors. Hey, this is what you can achieve with isolation from the fire, ventilation of this room. Those are powerful lessons, but we're not searching for, mannequins.
Yeah. And especially not live people.
Yeah, no.
So I will tell you a story because this is one of the craziest stories you hear. It's not me. There was before Russia extended its helpful arm to Ukraine to. So there was I call it the Baltic something blah blah blah. It was a cooperation between sort of in the Arctic regions where Russia and Finland and Norway. It was probably 10 years ago. I don't know, but anyway, it was the departments in Sweden who went to Russia for like a training. I mean, it's more politics than what is firefighter training. Like we should do a joint fire. And the information they got, it was a team from Sweden, sort of, like 5 people or 7 people or something like that. And they were supposed to be part of a drill in a hotel. And they were giving, like, there's going to be an incident at the hotel. You're going to search for people and so on. They're sort of, okay, we're going to do that. It's going to be drill. And they're standing on sort of a standby. And there's this huge explosion, about boom. And then this old derelict hotel guard. And then just windows just go boom. Blows out of one floor, and they go like, holy crap. And this was in Russia, and they would go like, okay, saying, a Swedish team, you're gonna go out, you get one floor. So the objective was to get one floor and get everybody out, and they get there and there's real fire smoke. And the Swedish tactic is you have to hold the hose line, so advance is fairly slow. I mean, I'm not saying it's good, and so I'm just saying that's just the way it is. It's just law,
right.
So advance is fairly slow when you have a hose line compared to if you could run without it and so on. So they start, taking one of the hotel compartments and they start searching it and nobody there, and start next one. And at some part, 5 minutes into the drill, they just firefighters start running around them. And they were going, oh, what the fuck is going on? Nobody speaks English, so they can't really ask them. They're just firefighters coming running here, and they're sort of like, should we continue the drill or what's going on here? And they continue the drill, and all of a sudden they see firefighters start dragging people out. So inside that house there was live people that with real fires burning and everything. It was live people that's supposed to. Nobody told the department this, and the
live people with ruptured eardrums.
And the Russians were like, "Holy crap! You are so slow. We have to go and rescue people because otherwise they would die." Because they were like, why did you just run in and take everybody out? Like, you're idiots. You're worthless. about having live mannequins. But then, rule number one: tell the crew that's going to rescue them that there are live people there. No, you shouldn't have live people. That's a bad. I think that's commonly agreed on that's a bad. So yeah, no searching. But like you said, I fully support, like, if you, for instance, have a fire on the first floor and you want to search, you want to practice VEIS, you don't practice VEIS, you just have a team in the bedroom who looks at what happens if the door is open versus closed during that fire buildup and everything. What happens when you suppress it? What happens on second floor? That's an excellent to just look at how the conditions change when you open the window, open the door, and all that is pre-planned. Because what I also think is very important, when you do the pre-planning and you know exactly at this point this door will open, this point this will happen, because if you're not on that point, you will just see the effects of it, but you don't really know what the cause of that effect is. Something just happened. But if you're like, okay, search team 2, open window, and you call that on the radio, everybody knows to go like, oh, what happened now? Oh, the flow from the hallway start going up the staircase. Okay, why? Because we opened the window on the second floor. Now everybody starts to see cause and effect, of course. And then you don't get with some people doing randomly stuff on the second floor and random stuff that seems happening in the house, and it's all just magic. Like, I can't anticipate anything. I don't know what it means because I don't know what's going on.
Sometimes, just to your VEIS example, sometimes we will have an exterior group do VEIS. Yeah. Obviously, there's no victims, but we do like to present that, hey, you're outside, you open the window from the outside, and we'll have made a choice about the door position on the inside, so that they can read conditions at the window when they create the opening, because we want them to see that exterior view, like, hey, is door open, door closed? Okay, it's open. All right, well, we've guaranteed the conditions are going to be sustainable in the room, so go ahead and dive in, find the room. There'll be an instructor there, and close it so they can experience that happening. But yeah,
it is a very limited task in that sense. Yeah. And I think the connection to everyone else also is so important, that, okay, now they know that the window is being broken. So they can also see, do we expect to see a change in something? For instance, a flow in the staircase. Oh, we're seeing the flow of the staircase, instead of coming out the front door of the first floor, now it's starting to go up the staircase. Go like, oh, we thought that's going to happen depending on the wind and so on. We can see it happening now. Because again, it is this thing. Things just happen, and if you don't connect it to a reason, it's sort of like useless.
Yeah, or you won because you were lucky rather than you were good, right?
But that all comes from 100%. Pre-planning, and as soon as you start going like, you can do whatever you like, see what happens, boom, lots of learning just goes out of the window.
Yes, and that's what we have to agree that. A live fire, especially the acquired structure, it's a educational learning environment. It's not a performance environment. Yeah. For so long, it's been a performance test, not a learning environment. And we gotta dial that back.
Now, I think it makes sense because if you now, I'm using the word magic as well, but if you don't really understand what to look for, then there's no reason to look. But when you start to understand that there's, okay, I can, look at flows with the thermal imager for seeing it's good. If I see, now I know what to look for, then it's fun and learning to see what happens if I change a window and everything. See, okay, oh, that's going to happen. Oh, that happened. But, I opened that window. I thought the smoke was going to go that way, but it didn't go that way because we have a little bit of wind maybe and so on. Now it makes sense to do that, but I think that a lot of times, at least from my perspective, when I started doing that, we learned a lot about fire in Swedish culture, way back, but we didn't learn to apply it well.
Yes. See, this is a problem I've run into in instruction, where people confuse what I would call fire science with like fire dynamics. So we used to teach recruits a lot about fire science.
Yeah.
Dig deep
Yeah.
into pyrolysis
Yeah.
and Charles' Law, all that stuff. And that is interesting, but a lot of it is hard to apply on the fire ground, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
What I need to understand is how smoke and heat move through a building, how the header will hold heat in different rooms. Like you mentioned, what's going to
Yeah.
happen when I open the window or the door on floor 2 to the fire dynamics on floor 1? When I flow water in the right way, how is that going to change gas flow to benefit, the search team
Yeah.
behind me, all that stuff. And that can be informed by some of the fire science, but the fire science isn't necessarily going to give me that understanding.
I think the disconnect is, a lot of times is that we, at least in the Swedish system, fire science was a big part of that. And it gives understanding of when you talk about, okay, what happens when you open the window, but you still have to sort of point it out what it means when you apply it. Like, so that's why we shouldn't break the window. Like, you have to point that out. It's like, you have to give the understanding, but also how to apply it. And I think that was a big part of our training system failed. Like, what is it we were trying to look for? I use the word applied science, applied physics. Like what's the outcome of this? I still think the science is important, especially for instructors, to create the right behaviors we want, and then of course evaluate them better. But it is, without the applied part is useless.
Yes.
We had the typical example in Sweden was, if you go back 50 years, everybody, even 50, I mean, so long as the fire service has been written down, we've done door control in the sense of closing the door behind the firefighters. It was if you go back to like the 40s and 50s, people closing the door behind the firefighters, because it was like limit the amount of oxygen to the fire. That's essential to slow the progress. And when interior operation became more common, it was just adopted. Like, when the fire crew goes in, someone stays behind and closes the door behind the fire crew, because we want to limit smoke spread and everything. It was just ingrained as a application of fire science. Then we started increasing fire science and education of firefighters, but we stopped closing the door sometimes in their end of 90s, 2000s, because there was a philosophy that the more you learn about fire science, the more you will just figure it out by yourself what the correct action is. It wasn't intentional, like it was just unintentional, like, because the why, why things happens, the more you understand, the better you will behave. And that did not work out. That was not, like, you still have to say, and again, it wasn't bad to do that, but you still have to say, okay, this is what it means in practice. When you open door on the second floor, we understand all the flows. That means you have to close the interior door on the bedroom as fast as possible. Otherwise, you will be in the flow. When you go inside to do a fire attack on first floor, you have a bad fire, you don't know how long it's going to take, close the door behind it before you start having suppression. Then you can open it up. I'm not saying everybody agrees with that, but that you have to tell them that this is the application we're looking for, connected to that science bits and pieces. And I think the acquired structure burn is one of those excellent ways we can really show those things, because unlike the fixed facility where you can sort of do some of those, but with limited fire and so on, you can really show them how that science applies in real life. But you 100%. But you still have a very big, and I want you to evaluate that, because you still, even if you say, okay, let's have team one here, let's say they're 4 or 6 people, whatever you can cram in depending on the size. They're sitting outside a fire compartment, but they can see what happened on the second floor. They don't know what's happening in the hallway. They don't know what's happening outside. So how do you think about you're creating different positions depending on, of course, how many students there are, how many structures do you have, how big is the building. So you do one evolution when they're sitting maybe in one position, Or do you rotate them during the same burn, or do you suppress and then rotate? Just talk about it a little bit how you typically do.
So we usually do a maximum of 30 students, preferably like 25.
Yeah.
And that will usually break down into what we'll call most buildings of average size. You'll have room for an extinguishment group right there. 5 students are attached to the attack line. They make the attack. It's more than you need physically, but they all get to be involved with seeing what happens there. You have an interior observation group, and they will generally observe ignition and then move to various positions within the building that's not along the fire's flow path.
Yeah.
And then you'll often have that exterior search group, if the building allows, doing some sort of VEIS. And then you'll have an exterior group that's just continuously doing laps around the building to watch smoke and heat fire progression as the fire builds up, so that you, like you said, you start to tie exterior cues and interior conditions together. So, you can start to get better at predicting what you're going to find on the inside based on what you see on arrival from the outside.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah. They wouldn't rotate during that burn. They would sit there for that burn in that room. Would you do suppression?
No, we'll have them move around. The suppression crew just does suppression, and then they'll do overhaul of the fire room.
Yeah.
Like removing burn fuel, ensuring that there's no extension. Other interior observation groups can and should move around during the course of the fire, pre and post extinguishment. One of the best things that we've learned is that they should not stay in place most of the time, depending on the observation platform. But there's great value in moving around inside the building. If you tend to just sit at like a bump on a log, you get many fewer view points, and you don't experience heat and smoke build up and travel as nearly as effectively as you could if you have an instructor that's shepherding you around the building. And the big thing is that those movements be pre-planned and coordinated with the extinguishment crew and the other crews that are working, so that when you're doing those other demonstrations that you mentioned, say opening a specific window or door to create an effect, those interior observation crews are either helping with that, or they're not interfering with it.
Yeah.
You avoid people getting in bad situations. So if you're going to proceed to the floor above the fire, that's got to be timed. And there's got to be a specific exit plan from the floor in the case of an emergency that people understand and have most likely practiced beforehand before the fire gets lit.
Yeah.
So you can and should have them move all around depending on the layout, but it's got to be coordinated and it's got to be practiced prior to the fire.
Yeah, I've done that. I've done multiple errors with that. And it is again, you become surprised how fast things move sometimes, and how fast it goes from, like, hell, I can see fairly well in here, like, boom, you got zero visibility, especially like you do in second floor on a house. It goes from a little bit of the haze in the building to zero visibility down to the socks.
Yes.
And that just complicates everything, of course, because you can be, and typically Swedish houses that we get to burn are very old, so they're fairly compartmentalized and fairly small. But even though that the distance from where they're sitting, or maybe, like you say, they're moving from maybe 2 to 3 positions to see different things, the position to maybe the stair going down, maybe just 10 feet, like, to speak your language, 3 meters or something. It may be ridiculously short. But to get those down the stairs, if it started to get a little bit dodgy, that takes a tremendous amount of effort. And you go like, I've got 4 people saying that. Just to realize, do I have 4 or do I have 3? Or do like that? It's surprisingly confusing, which is what firefighting is. It's just a mess.
Yeah, that's why we have decided that anytime we're moving people around,
yeah,
and it's a complex movement plan, which is a complex movement plan is basically anything that is more complicated than moving from the front of the room to the back of the room.
yeah. I
You
agree.
you make them do it in gear prior to the fire being lit.
Yeah,
And so you have an order laid out, who's going where, when, because like you said, once it gets to zero visibility, students will get lost.
yeah,
It's not, hey, they might get disoriented. They are going to get
yeah.
disoriented, you know, almost all the time. You just have to account for that.
I am surprised how often I get disoriented in when you call it, go, I'm just gonna leave this wall here and I'm just gonna go over here, and that's the doors are just on the right side, just on the left side here, and you go like, yeah, boom, I go to the other side and you just go left, like there's no door here,
Yes.
you're like, where am I? And you just off a little bit, you just ended up on the wrong wall, or just it's just confusing, which is firefighting, and that humbles you a little bit, definitely, about what's possible inside. Now I tend to give every crew a host line, find your way outline, basically. It's not, because of one of those things. Of course, thermal imagers is a huge benefit for everyone, both from a learning outcome, but of course also from a safety, so you can orientate yourself, your crew, find where everybody is. As an instructor, is of course invaluable to constantly be able to see where everybody is, with the knowledge that it might fail, or it might just the visibility inside just must degrade to the point where the thermal imager, you're not getting the image you want. So you have to always keep that in mind. But it is, like you said, those are extremely important. And I think that what you get with experience in acquired structure burn is a much more limited scope of what you should do inside an acquired structure burn. Like you go like, no, we're gonna keep it simple. We're gonna have a very, like I said, very organized. You're gonna be here. You're gonna be here. At this point, you're gonna move from this position to this position. If at any point there's a problem, we're gonna go out this way. Blah blah blah. I've done too many mistakes. But I also, I mean, and it is my fault. But the number of times where I think I've clearly communicated what we're supposed to do, and people are not doing it. Of course, it is in the end my failure of communication about what my goal is. But you just have to anticipate that people are not going to do even what you say you're going to do. Not even failing with it. Just not going to do it. They don't hear it. They don't understand it. They nod and say yes, sir, but do something else.
They may have every intention, but when the lights go out and the heat goes up, suddenly we're back down in animal brain mode. Yeah. All that stuff that was stored up here, that's gone.
I mean, you have and I'm going to go back to the acquired structure, but many times I've been doing I teach a lot of senior instructors, like, in my courses, like, and because my courses are not, they're sort of inspirational courses. I take a little bit here and here and take whatever you want. And I had and still have the assumption that if you go to a course with me, you're not the typical newest fire recruit. You're probably a senior, at least senior firefighter. You have many years on the job and so on. So I'll assume, which is wrong, and I have assumed that you know how to put your BA on, or if it feels bad, say something or go out at least, say something. But the amount of times I've been sitting in different, fixed facilities and acquired structures with people having, damaged gear and so on, because they're sitting in a place where I'm not. And I assume they know where the limit is. But they're not, because they're the same as everybody else. I'm not going to be the first one to go out because it's not me. Everybody else is probably feeling what I'm feeling. So I don't want to be the first one to point something out, because that's awkward. and I've tried to go like, okay, we're sitting 5 people basically next to each other. That doesn't mean we're sitting in the same environment. Because if you're positioned half a meter from me, that might be in the flow and I'm out of the flow.
Yep.
The amount of energy hitting you is not the same. If I go like, it feels good for me, but it might feel shit for you. I don't know. I can't feel what you're feeling. Like, you have to tell me something. I don't know if there's a failure on your gear. If you're it's not really tight behind your, like, there's 1,000 things that can happen. But it is, even with, and maybe it's even more so with experienced firefighters, that might be an issue, because they don't want to be the first one to say something.
Yeah, I'm the experienced guy from my department. I'm not going to be the first one to wuss out. No way. Oh yeah, you got to pull the trigger for them.
Yes,
because their egos won't let them.
And the only thing I really of course discovered was I have to always position myself in the position where I think I'm the most exposed one.
100%. Yes, I always try and put myself closer to the fire than the students.
Yeah.
And for instance, our rule with the instructor that's with the attack line is that they have to be either ahead of the line, and when they're proceeding without flowing water.
Yeah.
And once they start to flow water, they either have to be right next to them, or if it's too crowded, you have to literally be close enough behind them that you can grab them. Yeah. You need to be able to put your hand on their shoulder or their bottle, because students will advance too close to the fire. They won't flow water soon enough because they just don't know any better. And it's that same ego thing. I'm not going to be the one who, gets told like, hey man, you flowed water like 2 meters too farther away from the fire than you had to. No, I'm going to be that guy who gets his helmet all salty and so you got to be able to just no, flow water now.
I was in and this again, my failures. I have so many failures to tell you about.
I'm sure I have all the same ones. All of these rules that I'm telling you about are based on times where I was like, ooh, shouldn't have done that.
Shouldn't have done that. No, I was sitting. So it was we had a house. It was, one compartment's going to burn, and we're just sitting in the adjacent compartment. So it was nothing strange. And it was very close to going out. And they had a hose line. Student had a hose line. I didn't have a hose line. Student had. And I was sitting right next to the student. And we had gone through exactly before what to do and when to have it. So it was really simple. They was just going to let it, start running flames in the ceiling in the adjacent compartment, bank down smoke, and then do basically a 3-meter fire attack just to the doorway, and then whip it around inside the fire compartment, darken it down, and just back out. That was the whole drill. And the guy nozzle, and we have practiced it. I showed it. That person hadn't actually flown water in that position, but he had flown on the outside, and then I showed on the inside exactly how it's done. So I was sitting there, but I was maybe a meter away from that person. I started to bank down, and I was going like, "Yep, okay, let's go." And the person just walked into the fire compartment without flowing water. Just walked in, and the flames were like down at. He walked into flame, like, so the flame was just down basically to his pants, and it's not flowing water. And I was just, because it happened so fast, so I was just diving in, just like chugging the bottles, because I didn't have a hose line, so I couldn't flow water. So I just dive into the flame, just grab a hold of this bottle, and just threw him back. He was tumbling around, and then just frantically grabbing the hose line to get that one to start applying water and start to cool it down. And I was, of course, at that moment go like, why? Nothing happened. We have great gear. Like going into flame, you can do that for a limited amount of time. There wasn't even damage on the gear. Some reflexes and high vis and so on. So no big problem per se. But for me, it's like, holy crap! Like, how many times should I fail before I learn to do this properly? Because obviously, okay, so there was a communication problem. He wasn't really good at Swedish, so he was just nodding and saying, like, yes, I understand, but didn't really understand. I should have had my own hose line for sure, but I was like, no, I'm literally 1 meter away. I don't need an own hose line. I should have gone with them the first meter. I shouldn't, when he took the first step in, I shouldn't be then maybe 1.5, 2 meters away, because that's a huge distance when we just have seconds and so on. There's so many lessons where you go like, holy crap, it went from this is going to be great training to holy crap, I will never do another training in my life. But it is, I think, and it's very hard to convey if you haven't done that, how fast it goes from this feels pretty good to holy crap, now something is wrong.
Yes, no, I completely agree. That's yeah, it's all good. It's all fine. It's not fine. That's fine.
So another one. So, Bennett, do you always use 2 separate water supplies for your hoses or something like that? Do you like cross connect?
Yeah, that's so we always have to have 2 pumpers, 2 engines, and the safety line and the attack line have to be supplied off different engines. That's part of 1403.
Yeah,
and that's a requirement. And it's funny, I always thought, man, this is really overdoing it, until we were at an acquired structure and it was the final burn, and it was going to be a really big burn. The floor 2 of the structure was pretty much one open great room, because the house had a great view over this set of fields, and so they had a lot of windows and a vaulted ceiling. So just a giant floor 2. And so, of course, I said, well, our final burns, we're going to light that floor 2 on fire.
It's going to be beautiful.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And we're going to take a bigger hose line up the stairs to put it out. And so we light it on fire. Everything's going fine. There's some exposure stuff. So we've got a bunch of exposure lines, another interior safety line going, and between the different flows of all the different lines, the pumping engine for the attack line, it's a governed system, so it maintains pressure on its own.
Yeah.
But it was an older system, and so it got confused. And the attack line was at the top of the the attack line's at the top of the stairs. It knocked down about 2/3 of the fire, and then the pump just turned off. And so, exactly. And so, we backed the attack line back down. The safety line went back up and put the fire out. But it actually went fine because of what I talked about before with we practice complex movements before the fire, and we'd actually practiced moving the attack line up and then backing it down again in case of a failure. And so it went smooth. You just have to practice for failure.
Yeah, I'll tell you about mine where that became an issue. So I was sitting. So we don't have 1403, but it's sort of best practice to use different pumps when we can, and we use the water dividers. I know you're not a big fan of water dividers in general in Sweden because of the added complexity and hard to pump correct pressures and so on, but that's very common here to have so we call it cross connecting, so that both goes to the same church, the same water divider, and then to different nozzles. So if one pump fails, you still have one pump going into it, and the inlet is with a baffle, so it always takes the one with the highest pressure. So I don't have a problem with that system. I think it's really good. I've
never even heard of it before, so I have no opinion.
Yeah, no, but this is standard it's been going on for forever in Sweden and so on. So both connecting to the same water divider, and that goes to multiple hose lines. So you always have redundancy of pumps, but to the same nozzle. So you would have 2 pumps pumping the same nozzle.
Interesting.
Yeah, and because of that very simple baffle in the inlet, it would always swing and shut the one with less pressure.
Got it.
So you would have the pressure from whatever pump is pumping the highest pressure. So it's really simple, but I like it. But anyway, so typically we would have 2 pumps, and at this acquired structure we were going to have 2 pumps. But we know that because of limitations of, it was a small department, they didn't have a lot of trucks to spare to training. So they knew that when you run out of water on one of the trucks, one would have to leave and get water and come back. So you would have places during the burn where you only had one pump. So, and we go like, okay, well, let's do it anyway, sort of, and then just try to, if that happens, when that happens, let's try to, stay at the safe side. But communication, and the objective was, when that happens, someone's going to notify me on the inside and say, hey, one of the pumps is going to get water, so that now you have less redundancy. So that never happened. So I was sitting inside, and one of the pumps left and never notified me. And we're sitting, again, fire in one compartment. We're going to talk about the door, but I was sitting at the door, which I always sit between the fire compartment and the adjacent compartment. In the adjacent compartment, there was two teams, one with two nozzles. So one is going to do there's going to be a very short one, like a 4 or 5 meter, 10, 15, 20 feet fire attack, just to the fire compartment, darken it down and back out again. And the other one is just for safety. But now both lines were on the same pump. So which is the second problem for me, or second failure, was when that happens, I wanted to be close, because I would go like, I want to be close to the fire attack team when that happens. So I sat by the door until the conditions was right. And then I left the door and moved to the fire attack team and waited, 5 seconds more. And then we're going to do the fire attack to the door, because also I don't want to get wet and so on. You're sitting, in front of the tow stream.
Makes sense.
Yeah, from that perspective, makes sense. But at the exact moment when you start ripping in the ceiling, smoke start to bank down, I say, "Let's go." He opens the line, and you just, and I go like. And he's confused. He's holding the nozzle, so it takes like a second before I realize that nothing happens, because I'm sitting behind him, so I can't see the nozzle. I just see there's no water coming. So I look around and I see that just hanging there limp, and I go, safety line, attack, water, cool, and safety line goes because it's the same pump. It's been a massive pump failure. The whole pump is just exploded outside. It's just aluminum parts below the fire truck outside. So we're sitting there in worst possible moment, and I just go, okay, evacuate, and he starts banking down and everyone. But then again, we just, because we're limited, it's only 4 people, two on one line, 2 on the other. It's a very small room, but it takes seconds, and that's long seconds, and I have to be the one going like, okay, I need to make sure everybody's out. So I have to do like a first, make sure where I think everybody's out, and then do a check-in again. Those were long seconds with a lot of fire, because the distance to close the door, because that's what, of course, was the other option. I'm going to go for the door, but basically when the second line it went limp, there was fire blowing from basically the bottom to ceiling, and I go like, I would have to walk through flames to get to the door, and the door swung inwards.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, because it's a bedroom door, right? It's not you can just smack it and it closes.
Go behind it. You just push it in. I would have to basically lean in, because I was sitting there with basically a Halligan tool controlling the door, like with fire behavior wise. We'll get to the door later, but again, such a failure. Of course, I should.
That door was probably gone at that point anyway.
Of course, I should have had 2 pumps. Of course, my problem with I should have had a system where more reliable. Of course, I should have controlled that door better. But it's just one of those failures where you go like, nobody get hurt, nobody injures, nothing. But I go like that shouldn't happen. That's seriously unprofessional. And I had burned many houses when that happened. Like I had no excuses for letting that happen before. But it's just. Again, it goes so fast from going everything is good to now this does not feel good.
Yeah, well, and it's hard. You do something successfully for so long, you never have a specific type of problem. It can get real easy to say, that's never going to be a problem. Like, do we really have to pause these evolutions for 30 minutes every time? Like,
How
I've
often
never
has a
in
pump
my career
actually failed?
I've never
Yes.
had a pump fail. We have dual
Yes,
lines. I mean, lines fail. You know, like a line, but we have two ones. So I'm going like that could happen. Sure, like that's not a pump exploding. I've never experienced this. Never even heard of like a massive pump. It's like no, it wasn't part of my. It wasn't part of my like. Sure, two pumps, fine. Like
Yeah,
but that's excessive.
it's.
But there's a reason for it.
Yes, I agree. Yes, but it can be hard to maintain that discipline if you don't. Yeah,
But like if
it's hard.
If
but
I
you
were,
gotta.
Gotcha. So now because now you had this go. If it wasn't out swinging door, if I would have stayed at the door, it wouldn't be a problem. We can cut the door because for me, one of the lessons that I learned, of course, doing this was, 90% of all the problems is solved by doors. It's like that's the biggest safety feature that the acquired structures have are doors. Like
Yes.
because and the second, of course, the biggest you can do for learning outcomes are doors. Like you control the fire behavior, you pause it, you recommence it and everything. If you're just sitting by the door, you have control, you're at the most exposed, you can just go, okay, is there a problem? Or, what happened here? Blah, 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 blah. Open door again, just resume. How do you think about doors, and especially the door to fire compartment, exterior doors, generally when you think about evolutions?
Oh yeah, I completely agree. One of like our safety mantras are kind of like hose line, doors, and distance from the fire.
Yeah.
And if you've got at least two of those, like you've got plenty of time to play. And in terms of doors, even on rooms that don't have doors built in, if they will build a portable, basically door, get a sheet of wood like OSB or plywood, tack some handles on it, and then you can just put it in place because we want to demonstrate door control. And if it doesn't have a swinging door, then you just boop, 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 boop. Or sometimes we'll use that in areas where we don't, the door swing is going to interfere with something else.
Yeah.
So we'll take the door off and just put it there.
Yeah. And
it's amazing. I mean, you said it just right. It's amazing what you can hold back with just a simple sheet of OSB.
Oh yeah. And it is. And I'll share one of my failures with doors too. Because I think it's important, because both from a philosophy standpoint that I want to show that I'm not perfect. I have a lot of mistakes, but also because I think it's really educational. So again, like building doors, I think is really. So I was doing. We were fairly few. We were only 4 people inside, so it was a fairly small department, small burn. So it was just me and 4 people inside. We were in the basement. So we're doing the basement. So it was which is part of the reason why we were only so few people, because of exits are problematic. But we did do we had 2 hoses inside. I had one. The students had one, or the ones doing the burn. We had a small fire in there's going to be at least a small fire. Well, initially intended to be a small fire. And there was no door to that room, so we again like a sliding OSB sheet, or a sliding a thick one, a good one. So I was sitting by the door, and we had trouble because we had been burning second floor and first floor, and the water's been dripping through the floor, so that room was just wet. It was just soaking wet. So we had a real struggle with igniting that fire, because we didn't really intend to do the basement. It was sort of an after construction because we had time, and the department wanted to do it. So let's burn in the basement too. We could have, because otherwise we could have at least prepared dry fuel and so on to have just loaded in afterwards. But it was just so we used. I know you can't do that, but I don't have a big problem with it. We used diesel to some turbo on the fire. I've been to burns when they've used gasoline also. That's another, that's going too far on my end. But anyway, so we at some points we use diesel, especially when it's wet. So But diesel is at least we handled correctly. I don't have a problem with, you know. So control way we use diesel, and you know, have a struggle a long time. So that puts you off guard. I'm sitting by the door, and there's another person igniting it, you know, sort of in the ignition crew. So they're igniting. They have to do it all over again. It, you know, burns a little bit and it dies down. So I'm getting off guard, sort of. I'm sitting there by the door. And I put the hose line down, you know, just next to me, but it's you know, I'm not holding it in my hand. And now, after a while, the fire starts going, and it's going, and then it just grows really fast when it starts to kick off. So it goes from, you know, sort of good condition to zero visibility. No fire, no heat really, but it's really zero visibility. So I'm going like, oh, again, I need to, you know, get my hose line. So I'm turning around, zero visibility, and of course, there's no hose line here where I put it. So someone who went out just accidentally dragged the hose line with them. So it's not there anymore. But like, okay, holy crap. And then I turn around and the door is gone. You know, because it's just a sheet, but it's not there anymore. I go like, where did the door go? And I'm sitting without a hose line and without the door. And now it's starting to rip, you know, flames starting to shoot out in the ceiling. And I go like, holy crap, what did I do? And I tell the students to, you know, start flowing water, but they're not responding. They're sitting there, but they don't understand what I'm saying, or, you know, something. We're talking seconds. It's always, you know, like it sounds like this with 2 minutes. I'm trying to make them go like, cool, flow water, you know, in not in English. and you have those 6 seconds because the people went out. The hose line had snagged, well, at least I believe, they snagged under the door. So when they dragged the hose line out because they got caught, dragged the door to my left, and I didn't hear it. So the door had positioned itself just 2 meters to left of me, and I didn't notice that it slided that way.
Yeah.
So you go like, I went from, again, goes from this, and then no problem. 5 seconds later, they started flowing water. I found the door. I slid it over. We had fire rolling out in the basement window. So those on the outside for like a couple of seconds, they go like, holy crap, that entire room is just bathing in fire. It was totally fine for us because it was just rolling overhead. It was just beautiful and nice and no problem whatsoever. It was just fantastic. But they were on the outside going like, are you alive? But again, it goes from, I have a plan. It feels good. I think I have all the safety checks in place. I think I have a solid plan. And then those cheese holes line up. Someone dragged the hose away because I didn't hold it. I didn't pinch it with my knee because I've been sitting there for like 2 minutes of trying to get the fire working. So I let my guard down. It happened to sit on the hose, so it dragged the door away. And then, of course, also communication with the crew because they were not prepared to do that because that was not the plan. The plan was that I was gonna go back to them and tap them on the shoulder, and then we're gonna advance in. Yes. So it wasn't part of the plan that I was gonna yell, "Start to cool." So they were just sitting there when the fire rolled over their head and going like, "Yeah, Lars is gonna tell us."
Yeah, this must be normal.
This must be normal. What's the problem? Lars is good. He knows what he's doing.
This is fine. This is all fine.
This is so you know, again, go back to, so doors are essential, and from that on, I'm more. I usually tend to put like at least hose pieces of just hose and screw the door to one side so that it doesn't slide away. Well, like at least it stays sort of in that position. But doors, I like it. Doors are such an important part of safety.
Yeah, huge.
And that's typically my position when I burn. I'm at the door. I control everything from here, and it gives me a control of what's happening. I can pause. I can, you know, if I knew something's happened, I can control the fire behavior, slow it down a little bit, or speed it up if I want to. Now I still have, and the thermal imager sitting there with the thermal imager and that one. I keep thermal imager, keeping control on this one, but a lot of times I don't really see what's going on, even sitting by the door, because it's too black. I can't even see that there's fire blowing out on top of me. I took the thermal image, like, holy crap, there's there's a lot of fire here. Let's start with the fire attack, for instance.
That's an interesting difference. That's an interesting difference for you, since you can burn modern combustibles.
Yeah.
So with us, we can't burn modern combustibles in training, and so the visibility of the fire is always there because we don't have that black smoke from modern combustibles.
Yeah, no, we don't have those. I mean, most of the time there is no need to burn anything else, so we don't do it just because it's fun. But a lot of times, because acquired structures is a rare thing, a lot of departments, it's not like something to do every time, so they want to maximize the value from that. So some of those rooms will have, because it's old rooms, they always filled with crap when we get them. So you would take some of that. Yeah. So you would take some of that crap.
As long as you're engaging in the correct precautions, I am not against it.
No, and we have very good
especially from a that would be my thing. As long as you're engaging in good decon, I think the limited exposure risk is worth the training value.
Yeah,
that's just where I come down.
Firefighters are going, holy crap, you can't see anything. I go like, yeah, that's that's normal.
That's it. That's normal.
That's normal. Because the reaction is because of fixed fire facilities and so on. You always have some visibility at the floor most of the time and so on. So they're not used to like going down to the floor and like there's zero visibility. Now we always, for environmental reasons, the rest of the house is entirely clean. All cables, all PVC, everything. It's just wood beside that. But we throw in a sofa for the learning outcomes, just to have that if it's needed. Now we typically also, because for you, most of from what I understand, because you don't typically do other things than inside fire attacks with a hose line.
Yeah. So we don't use things like you're talking about with the fire nail or other stuff. It's either interior attack with a hose line or an exterior attack from the window.
Yeah. Because I typically, and this is most of the time because departments want to see it, we first do, each room pretty much most of the time has the same burn. So you do a fire, and it's, so you build it up halfway, and then you do dry chem attack, either from inside or dry chem nail, to suppress that fire. Okay. Because the dry chem is, they will see that it suppresses the fire, but it will rekindle, and it's not hard to ignite if it does actually extinguish it. But for us, dry chem is very good first response tool to get a quick knockdown with a portable fire extinguisher and so on, especially at our part-time fire stations where you have the fire officer responds in their own vehicle. They don't have, of course, so they have, they take a couple of fire, dry chem extinguishers and hit it through from outside or from inside, depending on conditions. So that would be the first. So that takes sort of the first minute of the burn. You build it up, and then you do a dry chem attack, and then you leave very little time because it doesn't cool and wet everything. So then you build it up again. So the second suppression would typically be a fog nail, because it never hits, and we position it so it doesn't hit the fire. It just cools the space down. So it will rotate the smoke, it will cool the smoke, and they will see, like, oh, we're suppressing that fire, but we're not extinguishing it. Because that's basically what the probable outcome is. You pause the fire, you buy yourself time, you can, whatever you want to do. So, and that gives the fire is not soaked, so it's still hot. But you get that outcome of having that one. The third one could be the transitional attack, when you do hose stream through the window, because now probably then the window is broken, because we typically leave the windows intact.
Right, so you're not going to break the window so that you can flow water through it.
No. So by that time, we're waiting for the window to break. Typically, it will break, and they show the transition attack when that breaks. And the transition attack will just darken it down. But again, it won't soak the room. It won't soak the fire. So we'll rebuild again. Again, showing that we can suppress the fire. We probably won't extinguish it. But then, and the fourth time it builds up again, we'll let it build even more, roll out in the hallway. and then do the interior fire attack. So that gives.
And is that? Go ahead.
Yeah, and that gives us, so we sort of have four build-ups for the same crew sitting in the hallway, seeing that. And then you would rotate, put new crews in the inside, another crew on the outside, another maybe observation team, like you said, on the different position. You rotate them and take another room, or maybe the same room if you want to re-prep that one. But typically a new room, do the same thing again. You do a dry cam, you do a fog nail, and then you do a transition attack, and then you finish it off with an inside attack.
Yeah, sounds like a great progression.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of learning in that, and they really, because it hones in also that we're really honing in the difference between suppression and extinguishment, and what's the goal of each tool, what's the expected outcome, and so on. And everybody, and I know I'm a big fan of both the dry cam and fog nails. I think they would do magic for you too in your context, even with your big American fire trucks and so on. So I find them fantastic tools, which also we reiterate when you do that, because people are all like, holy crap, you can do a lot of good with those kind of tools, depending on what the situation is.
You get the stuff in the right place, you don't need a lot of it.
No, you don't need a lot of it. But it could be an advantage to have a lot of it.
Oh yeah, it's always good to have more.
So we do that. So do you typically do multiple burns in one room, or do you typically do one burn in each room?
We'll usually do 2 burns per room.
Yeah.
It often depends on the building size and construction.
Yeah.
So if it's just sheetrock, sometimes we'll only do 1, because you have to prep the room a lot.
Yeah.
In order to maintain.
Yeah, to get good
kind of the.
Then.
Yeah, because after 1 good burn in a room with just sheetrock, you'll have to replace all the interior sheeting because it'll come off.
Yeah.
Once it's preheated, and then it gets hit with our our hose streams.
Yeah.
So yeah, usually once or twice. We usually don't use a building more than 2 days in a row, because that ends up being a lot more prep to ensure that there's not extension into the void spaces.
Yeah.
So it's no more than usually about twice in any one room, because then you can. But your prep time and materials just start to skyrocket.
Yeah.
And also, like you mentioned, the rooms get saturated with water, and then it's very difficult to get ignition going again. It takes more time.
Yeah, so second burn
usually
is always way worse.
Yeah. So we usually burn once in a room and then move to a different room, let that room kind of drain, dry out. And then if we're going to go back there the next day. So.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever done a 2-day burn. It's always sort of 1-day burns. Typically departments don't want that. Just to maintain the staffing, everything, the cost to do one, she seems to be sort of that, and the amount of work to make sure it doesn't burn down to next. I mean, our construction is at least similar to yours. It's all wood based. It's all void spaces everywhere. Now, I typically, because I have two options. Either we prep a lot and take a lot of times, or we just prep nothing basically. And we go in and typically I prep nothing in terms of preventing fire spread to void spaces. But we not check for seals and tied up and then drywall rooms and everything, because it's a lot of money and a lot of man hours to do that, which is of course better. There's no question about it. It's just a form of cost. So to prevent that, that's another part where I love fog nails, especially for required structures, because we pre-place fog nails in all the void spaces.
Yeah, nice.
So they're pre-played, and there's a hose line down to a ball valve on the ground. So whenever we get extension, we're not gonna overhaul it, because it takes a lot of time for the drilling. We want to get as many evolution as can. We're just going to suppress it in the void spaces from the ground. So we have the outside team goes like, oh, we're getting smoke from the void space over here. Like, we're just going to keep it down. When it starts going a little bit blacker, we just give it, 15 seconds or 5 seconds of water with the fog nail inside, and that pushes it down. And then, so we will just keep that down for the hours, like 4, 5, 6 hours, whatever we do the drill. Typically, that's about the time for maybe 4 hours, maybe sometimes 6, stretch it out before all the evolutions are done. And then you just pull the fog nails out and it burns to the ground. It's just, it is, yeah.
That sounds very easy.
It's super, yeah, it's again, I want to focus on what's the value. If overhaul is a big learning outcome, that's a great learning outcome. And sometimes we do burns on the second floor with one team, while another team does overhaul maybe on the first floor. But that would be very rare that we sort of do 2 drills in one. Because of course you need to do that safely and so on, that you burning, like say first floor. Typically I would burn on second floor and then first floor, and then remotely if we get a basement. That's very, very rare that we would do something in a basement. But but then again, maybe start on first floor, burning that, get extension here, and then have a drill on overhaul going at the same time as you do a drill on second floor. But that is, I would say that is going, I don't like it. It is
a lot to coordinate.
It's a lot to coordinate. There's just potential for risks and so on. So I don't like it, but it is possible. And I like to avoid that. So let's just build, and we just do these evolutions back to back, which sucks for me because I'm usually inside for like 4 hours straight. It could be because I don't have a big cadre. Like I'm a
right.
So I can't rely on anyone else. It's a big problem for me because I haven't really wanted to or could build that kind of cadre. So I typically inside because it's a problem because I want to do back to back so I can pace myself to do that, in a good way. And of course with short rest to go out, get a breather and that, but it is getting back to back to just maximize time inside for people.
Yeah.
And that the fog nails and the pre-placed fog nails allow me, because even if it gets into void space, I can just go, yep, you're responsible to suppress that. I'm going to focus on inside. If for some reason that spreads and becomes a problem and you can't suppress it, then notify me and we'll have to take it under control from inside maybe, or another way. But if you pre-placed your fog nails correctly so that they're inside every void space, typically, maybe 1, 2 in the attic, because it's a shared volume up there. So you as long as you place somewhere in the attic, that attic will not burn until we let it burn.
Right.
Period.
And that sounds very easy.
Yeah, and maybe there's knee walls, and you position 1 in each knee wall. Maybe sometimes the knee walls are separated, so there's 4 and 4, and then you need basically 1 for each knee wall and 1 for the attic space. And then you're good. You can not burn forever, but you can keep that fire under control for 8 hours if you like. And that's also one of the lessons out comes turn. We go I don't care if the fire is crawling somewhere. It can crawl in the void spaces for days. It's not going to eat away the structure. The only time it will eat away the structure and becomes a stability problem if it goes to flaming combustion. But it will not go to flaming combustion if you have a fog nail in there that would just rotate the space around the gases, cool them down, and boom, it's gone. It's and that's a learning out. They also go oh, holy crap, if we just place a fog nail there, even if it's flowing for you, it's just 15 gallons per minute, you don't need more. That's more than you need to create. Which also why people go those are pretty good at if you have void space. Yeah, they're awesome. It's not going to burn to the ground until you let it. Don't open it up until you've Yeah, that's a different topic, but yeah, I think that could also be. I would also love for you to dabble in there and put a breast and nozzle in each. Go
I'll take a fog nail. The resin is a pain. That thing's big. It's heavy. Plus it puts out a huge amount of water. I just need, like you said, that 20 gallons that I can shove up into the attic.
Yeah. And couple that with a not even an inch line, like a 3/8 or something, like a really small line. It becomes highly maneuverable.
3/4 inch booster line.
Yeah. It's just highly maneuverable. Get up on ladders and everything. It's just it's perfect. Some departments they even modified it, put like shower valves on them. You punch it and it gives you water for like 15 seconds and then it stops because they don't want to flow too much, because there's no need to flow all the time. It just creates water damages. So you have to punch it every 15 seconds you want water. And that is just to make sure that firefighters can't overflow water and just damage the building. But that's not the standard. That's a sort of an after construction. So you burn one maybe 2 times in each room. So typically,
if we do going back to your thing about 1 day versus 2 days, if we do a 1 day burn, we won't do any prep. We'll just burn in each room like you do. It's just not worth the labor costs or the
materials and
the materials. It's just easier. We'll burn in each room, and then if it needs overhaul, we'll do that. If it holds up, great.
Would you sometimes start on the first floor and then go to second floor for some reason?
We almost always start on the first floor and go to the second floor afterwards. Yeah, for the exact reason that you mentioned, which is water infiltration. Because if you start burning on floor 2, and then especially since we flow large volumes of water, once that water hits the sheetrock on floor 1, sometimes the whole ceiling will actually just come down. And so then the room below is essentially worthless. So we'll burn on floor 1. And since we're not burning for prolonged periods of time, I mean, our average burn from ignition to extinguishment is, 5 to 9 minutes. We're not affecting structural members, right? You might get some smoke ups, and you get smoke upstairs, but that's great. That's another viewpoint. But you're not getting structural damage, so it doesn't really matter.
My burns, because we do these multiple evolutions, my burns is probably, each ignitions is probably 20 minutes. So it is a fairly long burn time in each room. Now, that said, all the houses we burn are old Swedish houses. They're thick. There's sheet. Maybe there might be sheetrock, but below that there's planks and there's timber. Like, they're not collapsing. So I wouldn't have a problem. It just feels a little bit better. And when we do these evolutions, typically we don't have a lot of problem with water on the first ground, because even if, I teach straight streams, but we typically the fire tacks are very short, but the time we have the nozzle open is fairly limited, so we don't get a lot of water damage on the first floor. So typically I don't have that problem. But with if it's just sheetrock and you get water in, I would definitely see that's that. And maybe if you do longer burn times, I could be worried about someone stepping through the floor or something. But typically we started
post after each fire, we always do inspect the room, right? And so if the sheetrock has failed, then the first thing you do is you just look up and look at the floor system. Yeah. And if the floor system is suspect, which it up to this point it never has been. Yeah. But if it was, then we'd just close off that room. Yeah. Or you can take sheetrock, or you could take some plywood or an OSB sheet up above and reinforce the floor. Yeah.
No, it makes sense. I have no problem with that. Now, I just typically, because we do longer burns, I do longer burns, because you have these different evolutions with fog nail and everything. The total time to burn the burns is longer, which means that the likelihood of fire spread is much higher, which means we need the fog nails, because typically we always have extension. We always have extension, and we don't deal with extension. We let it crawl. So that means if we start on the first floor and we have extension in the subfloor between, and we don't address it, of course, eventually it's going to be a problem, even if it's crawling. So that's why, like, I would have to do first floor for a second. I would have to switch to do overhaul and that. And, right. And also just
where if it's just in the attic, that's not a big deal.
Yeah, no, an overhaul for me is much more labor intensive than your houses, because you could just pull the sheetrock and it would be maybe insulation there just glass wool. But I'm burning in houses that are typically, probably built 1900s or something. There's sawdust and everything. You got like doing overhaul. It's not done lightly.
Gotcha.
So it becomes a problem to do that. So, yeah. On the other hand, like stability is never an issue. Like stability is part of, even though I'd like to be on the safe side anyway. We should also, the second one is if we have a fire on the first floor that we haven't dealt with the extension, to start making fires on the second floor, even taking stability out of sight, it's always not. It doesn't feel good to have a fire under control.
Don't like it. Don't like it.
No. So you would have to place teams to have that under control and everything. That costs manpower then to do not. So I don't know. I like starting on the second floor and then going. Now the real big downside for me, the only real big downside is I always get an attic fire. Because of that extension, and so the attic would typically where eventually the attic start to, when the roof start to decay, that's typically the place. If we have to stop early sometime, it's because of the roof is starting to sag. Now typically we're burning on the first floor then, and then the subfloor is really strong. So even if the outer wall would collapse, it wouldn't be a problem. But we typically, when that starts to sag, we call it a day and go out. And that depends on the construction. If it's really old, you got to do this. We had, you have these layers of sawdust, and then you have the attic space, which is open, but then you have mounts of layers of different. It could be organic, could be even, like earth floors, like earth roofs, like where this built on. Then you have someone slapped a tin roof on that, like this layered. It's impossible to deal with that. Like, it's just it's overhaul on steroids. So acquired structures, you do that. So typically, if you do one day, you just do once every room. You switch those positions out. How many structures would you have with you when you do an acquired structure?
How many instructors?
Yeah, how many instructors would you like to have?
I would have myself plus one instructor per student group.
Yeah.
So, and our student groups are never more than 5.
Yeah.
So now who those instructors are can be dependent.
Yeah.
If we, but it's going to be probably 6 people total. And then the other thing that's critical that we've run into is you have to make sure that whoever is operating the pumper is qualified. And sometimes departments will say that the pumper operator is qualified, but you got to double check that, because it might be, again, that volunteer who's a great guy.
Yeah.
He's there every time, but he really doesn't actually know how the system works. And sometimes we'll use local folks for instructors, but very rarely.
Yeah.
We kind of have to know and trust them, just because we're doing fire behavior in the acquired structures at a level that most people are not familiar with, right? So they might be a good instructor at what they teach, but they're just not familiar at teaching in that environment.
I would love to be able to do that. I think that's absolutely right to have your own instructors. I'm forced to, because of my not having a cadre, also because that would increase the expenses for the departments. So it wouldn't necessarily just be that. That's why I'm in all the time, and I'm always at the door, because I see it as the most essential position. And then they would be a responsible instructor for all the group from the local department. But it's also I have no idea who they are, but right. I don't even have the trust.
Yeah, depending on the departments, we've done it with as few as 2 people.
Yeah,
right, because you just have a frank conversation with the department heads, like, okay, let's have an honest conversation about where your people's skills and abilities are. And or at least I've gotten to the point where it's like, okay, I feel like I don't mind having your people in these particular positions based on what the training objectives are, what the building structure's like, the type of evolutions we'll run. They're going to be simple.
We're not asking much of anyone who's going to be in these non-essential or less essential instructor roles. But the ones that I always make sure are staffed by myself or my people is the instructor who's with the attack line.
Yeah.
And then myself who's managing the fire behavior.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. I wish I could, like, I wish at least I could have what I would like to have to duplicate myself, and plus at least 2, so that we can switch, do 1, and I could go out and rest and switch back. That would be, well, like, but on the other hand, I would get half the exposure to fire behavior myself. So that, like I go, I'm an egocentric guy. I want as much time inside as possible to see it.
Oh yeah, I've had to tell my instructors, like, hey, you guys need to tell me to let you do certain jobs, because I'm not going to be good. I'm not going to be good about giving you guys opportunities to build your own skills.
Go like, I'll take this for safety. I just think it's fun. That's great. No, I really, and again, when I started seeing what you post on social media, it was also because I've of course learned stuff and thought about stuff, but it was also like a vindication of sort of myself, my ideas, that I'm glad at least someone else has gone to a lot of the same conclusions about how to run acquired structures in some way that's both effective in terms of learning, but also at least semi-safe. Now, I wish I had resources. And typically, it is, and it goes back to Swedish. We have a very low instructor count on all our training. And I thought that was normal when I went outside. Like when we were on. They were on shift, for instance, on our station and so on. We would go with the shift, go up to the training building, light a fire, and do fire attacks without instructors. We would just do it, because we had a training building outside of the station, we were full time, so we could just go out with the shift and do fire attacks if we wanted to. Like we had, I thought that was normal, both in terms of not being we didn't need to have a formal training, we didn't need an instructor, that you were allowed to do that, but also that you just could do that. Surprisingly, we didn't do that a lot of times because a lot of people don't want to do fire training. But the dirt is on, and that it reduced by time because of exposure and the cost for cleaning and so on. But when I started 20 years ago or more, 20 years ago, sort of when I started, that wasn't an issue back then. So then we just went training and then put our gear back. But it started to become an issue then, and washing that cost money and so on. But the low instructor count. The first time I was in America, I was like, we're gonna do a live fire drill, and it was like, we got an ignition officer, safety officer, and a plan officer. I go like, how many? Like, there's more instructors here than our students. I go like, how is this? No wonder it's expensive to do live fire training. Was my reaction.
Yeah. No wonder no one does it when you have to.
Yeah. And it was, to me, it was comically overdone, because there was, and my interpretation then was, and I think it was true then, because they didn't typically, and this might have, the knowledge of fire behavior was so poor generally in America. If you go back when I started traveling, maybe starting 15, maybe 12, 10 years ago, when I really started sort of more traveling, so on, the general behavior, the fire behavior knowledge was so low that you compensated lack of understanding what was going on with formal lots of checkboard things. We have to have safety officers here, a dedicated RIT crew on standby for a demo drill inside a container. It was like everything was reactive.
No, that is an accurate assessment of both the state of fire behavior knowledge at the time, and also the American approach to risk management in live fire training in the fire service. Very reactive.
Yeah, because
something bad happens, so let's pass a rule so people can never put themselves in that situation again, as opposed to, hey, how about we just educate some folks that they can recognize when this situation is going to happen and avoid it.
Yeah, and just apply water, for instance.
Yes.
Just have hose line. No, it was because that was for me, it was, which was part of the reason why I never, just to switch topics and go back. Part of the reason why I never was interested in the straight stream because to me it was, these people have no idea what they're doing. They don't know anything about fire. And when they talk about the straight stream, there's no connection to science. It's just, we think it works best. And based on everything else, see how you know about fire and everything, that makes no sense. This is a simplified, version of that, but it didn't give credibility about like, oh, holy crap, that the straight stream thing is interesting, like how it works and everything. It was all part of the like, oh, the belly of the beast is burning and we're gonna feed it with water and that makes it good. And I go like, no. We in Sweden, we're scientific and we are better. But of course, I realized that like that their experience is also makes a huge deal and so on. But it is like the reactive thing, and I agree with. I think that finding the sweet spot between how many instructors do you need, and because it cost, and cost is everywhere a problem. I know you live in a fairly rich area of United States, so I don't know. I think a lot of being through America also, I know there's vast differences in America, which is at least somewhat tied to costs. Yeah. So in some places you don't go like NFPA is just an opinion, and OSHA is just it's the government devil.
Well, there's ways around. There's ways to design it. Like you can have people who are on the crew be instructors.
Yeah.
Right. You could bring the crew in, and guess what? The officer is their instructor.
Yeah.
So you don't have to have some guy getting paid overtime.
Yeah, just to be the extra. Yeah.
Just to be the extra instructor.
Yeah.
So some people misinterpret the standard and end up hiring way more people than they need. So,
do you think 1403 is first off, another question before I answer that one. Is 1403, do you think pretty much most departments follow it? Or is it still sort of like, because when I was there, it was 1403 was sort of like some follow it, some didn't follow it, some followed portions of it.
I think most departments who do live fire training do their best to follow it now.
Yeah.
There's been, I would say if you were here 15 years ago, awareness of the standards was much lower. And the perception was, it's just a voluntary standard. And now people have come to realize, one, that it exists, and also that if you fail to follow it and someone gets hurt or killed, you will be held criminally liable.
Yeah.
And when they say voluntary, at least in the US, if an industry develops a voluntary standard and then you don't follow it, you will be held liable to the standard because it's recognized as industry best practice.
Yeah.
And so I would say most people attempt to follow it. I'd say that's one of the reasons why, especially acquired structure training, has gotten much harder to do or less frequent.
Yeah.
Because people feel like they can't comply with the standard and still conduct a training. I don't think that's necessarily true. But does that answer your question?
Yeah. For the first one, and second one is do you think 1403 is if you, in the best of words, you had well-educated instructors that didn't do obviously stupid things, which is of course reason why many standards exist, because a lot of people do stupid shit, and Johnny did something stupid. Nobody gets to do what Johnny did. Do you think 1403, if we had better instructors, do you think it's a too much of a limitation, or do you think it's still a good framework to work from?
I think it's a good framework to work from.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, would I write the standard exactly as it is? No, but I'd say it's a good starting point. I would agree that we need something.
Yeah.
And I think that if people knew, I think the gap with 1403 is that 1403 is the rules of the road, but it doesn't tell you how to drive the car.
Yeah.
Right. So, and so a lot of instructors struggle because it doesn't
like I'm actually trying to put out more educational material on this. Like, hey, how do you actually design a fuel package and design a vent profile and position students so that you can have realistic fire behavior with 1403 compliant fuels?
Yeah.
Because all that stuff, like, should you have 2 pumpers? Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, makes sense.
Should you understand your vent profile? Should you have people with a certain level of education in instructor positions? Yes, all these things are true.
A lot of things are good.
And so, but people don't know how to work within that system to achieve what they want.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where the breakdown happens.
Well, I mean, I know there's a lot of people doing sort of 1403 training that's not NFPA assigned about actually how to use 1403 in a good way, not actually about what the standard says, to follow it by the letter. And of course that is what is needed. And so a lot of fire nerds with private companies and so on do training, I know. And I thought about it. I knew when I was over there, especially like 5, 6, 7 years ago, I was asked a lot of questions about should 1403 come to Sweden. Sweden from NFPA people wanted to see, like, because they didn't, nobody knows what NFPA is in Sweden. I mean, it's a non,
right.
Nobody knows what it is. It's not. Some countries in Europe have and it had adopted some NFPA standards, I think. So some parts of Europe, I think, at least know what NFPA is. But Sweden is like nobody knows what it is. But a standard in Sweden, I think would also be good, because I think it's more of a numbers game, that we didn't have any serious injuries on live fire of acquired structures more than it is skills. I think it is, if we were to burn more houses in Sweden, we would have a serious accident, because there is no regulations, and some departments and individuals, good-hearted, are just doing stupid things, like using gasoline. There's still people using gasoline in places where I go like, holy crap, how can you not have figured out that as a bad idea?
Yeah.
And I've been to acquired structure burns where people used gasoline, and I was go like, holy crap, how is this impossible? Even after I said it that was a bad idea they used. And I have some of them on video where you're like, typical example, some of the fire's not burning as it should. Using diesel, and it's wet, it's hard to ignite it because it's cold, so you need to heat up the diesel, and it's hard if diesel in water, it's very hard to heat it up so nothing happens. I'll just get some gasoline, and I throw it on, and whoops, there was an ember somewhere, and when I throw it on, it ignites, and then you get a vapor cloud, and then all of a sudden you have a firefighter burning, and everybody laughs. You have good gear, at least they're in full gear, nobody get hurt, everybody laughs, and I go like, holy crap. Like, I can't even show that as a like the video. I can't even show the video as how not to do, because it's just so embarrassing. I'm calling the word
embarrassing.
It's so embarrassing to even show it that I get cringe. I get it's I can't.
I'm just curious. How are you lighting? Like, what are you actually using as your ignition source?
A propane torch.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Big one. I mean, you use a propane torch, I guess, the same.
Yeah. I was just thinking, like, you could just leave the propane torch on for a little bit longer.
Yeah, but we are inherently lazy people, and diesel burns faster than wood.
That is true.
I'm not saying
straw works great too. Straw works great.
I would not have a problem to have a 1403 that says you can't use it, because I know that some personally, I think I can handle it safely. And that maybe is hyperbolic, and have a strong.
No. It's funny when you mention diesel. Like, I mean, I grew up in the country. Yeah. I've burned diesel, but the difference with diesel and gasoline is that diesel is not a vapor at room temperature.
No, but you can still fuck up diesel. You can still fuck up diesel. So typically, and I'm very, you know, like you go like, okay, you have to, like, if you go into, typically this is the scenario that where a diesel will front. You go in, do the second burn. You have had a burn, and you go in, and it's, you know, hard to ignite with just the propane, so you get some diesel and you pour it on, but you're not quick with the propane burner, so you pour the diesel on, and it starts to evaporate because it's not room temperature where you put it. It's 50 degrees, it's 100, 200, 300. It's not flaming, it's not smoldering, but it's hot as hell. So it will off gas, and if you're not quick enough to ignite it, of course you will get some kind of woof. And so I know that, and I've never myself had a problem with it, because, you know, if you have a propane torch and you have a good way of discharging the diesel that is safe and so on, you can just put it on and there will be no vapor cloud. Wouldn't be. But the potential for that kind of problem is, of course, given that the average level of the wannabe instructor that can do it in Sweden, it's just a matter of time before it happens.
Yeah, I guess I just must be more patient since we can't use anything like that. The idea of leaving the propane torch on for 2 straight minutes to get something going just doesn't seem like that big a deal to me.
I told you, patience is a dirty word. No, but I think that also it's about one thing too. I'm very cautious about being effective in training. I hate waiting times. So I am, it's, you know, everything. I don't want students should go like pop between learning experiences, unless there's like a coffee break, like it should be. So waiting 2-3 minutes to get the fire going is when they're sitting inside, they're breathing air. I know that my burn is probably 20 minutes, you know, maybe even 25, so on. So if they use 10 minutes of the bottle before the burn even starts, some of them might struggle before we're even done. So there, like, the clock is ticking it behind my head that there's, you know, people just sitting there wasting air. I know that air is typically one of the big limitations we have when we do acquired structures, because we're consuming so many bottles. To get them filled is typically a problem. So air and water is typically the sometimes diesel has been a limiting factor, but typically air and water for the trucks are the big, of course, the biggest drawbacks, where we say, oh, we have to postpone, we have to, you know, wait for bottles to arrive to do the next burn, and we get those breaks, which I just hate. Especially if we have we haven't prepped the house, because we have as soon as we do the first burn, we have a fire crawling inside the structure somewhere.
Gotcha.
So it's not like you just go for a break and then no, it's continuous work until from you start till you finish, unless you have to do overhaul and just have a lucky break. And sometimes that happens. We don't have fire break, don't have spread, and we can take a lucky extra break.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's what you do seems in many ways very similar, but in many ways completely different from what I do. So
I think to be like building construction is one of, I think that with a different building construction, I think I would have to switch a lot of those things. And if I would, in that case, start on the first floor, I wouldn't need diesel as much, because we wouldn't do everything would be drier because we don't wet it.
Well, and I think your prolonged burn times with all the different demonstrations that you're trying to do with each burn, that's so different than what we do, since our extinguishment methods are so much simpler. All right, we got one. We got one.
Yeah, and I would love to. And then, I mean, the plan we had, or at least the thought we had of me coming over and do a burn, I think that would be super cool to have those fog nails and do dry cam and do different kinds of evolutions like that. I would be super happy to hear to get you to see that and see how you would react to it and see what you feel about it.
I'm sure. I'm always down to try something new.
Yeah, at some point it would be awesome to see how you operate. Now,
new to me at least. Old for you.
Yeah, no, but for me, it would be new to see in detail everything we talked about. How you do your I would love to see your pre-briefs before I do walkthroughs, your debriefs, your there's so many details I would find fascinating to see how you do it. So I would love to come over sometime, maybe in 2047. That will magically happen when I retire and I can come over and burn houses. But now I need to go to bed. It's 20 minutes to 12, and I need to be up in 6 hours to do work.
You got some stamina. I would have been at bed an hour ago.
Yeah, no, but I'm talking fired. Actually, you get fired up. No, it's been excellent, Ian. I'm very thankful for your time. I think this will be valuable for a lot of other people who love doing not just acquired structure birds, but also live, fixed facility. I think it would be valuable. So I hope other people will appreciate it too.
I hope so. Let's see if they stick around for the whole thing.
I really appreciate 3.5 hours, so it's not a.
I really appreciate your time, Lars. It's always fascinating chatting with you, getting your perspective, and it is nice to see that someone on the other side of the pond is of the same mindset through all your experience. It, like you said, that is comforting to see someone else having made the same mistakes and kind of ended up in the same place. So
it is comforting, and it also scary and so on. Like you're always second guessing yourself. Like, am I really on the right track? Am I the only stupid one here? There's, is it, why are all the fishes going that way? Am I the only ones going the different way? Am I the crazy one, or am I just the one who found the golden nugget? So it is, it is very comforting, but it is also, I find it, you should be scared to put yourself out there, which I love that you do. You put yourself out there, which is really scary in some sense.
Yes, it is. I still worry sometimes that someone's going to come back and be like, "Hey, I saw this online, and I killed some people."
Yeah, no, it is scary for so many reasons. But you go. To me, I go I always value. I go first. I think I could provide value for others, of course. So if I put myself out there, but it's also selfish because the more I put myself out there, the more chance I have of people calling bullshit on things and asking questions that get me go oh, maybe that doesn't make sense. So it is both a chance to help other people who would find value in it. But again, the more I put my thoughts out there, the more people I wish people were more honest, or had the guts to say.
I agree. Good critical feedback is so hard to get.
It's almost impossible, because I have not a system, but I continuously go around other people asking them what they say about me. Now I try to that sounds sort of narcissistic in that sense, but I know that people will not say what they think about me or what I say directly to me, but they will say that to other people, because they don't want to hurt my feelings, for a good reason. They might not hurt my feelings. They don't want to be challenged back, maybe, or they're afraid of, being pushed back and so on. There's many reasons. So I try to go around a lot of people asking, what did you hear other people said about me doing this lecture? That seems to be the most, at least where I get some feedback, which is not negative. A lot positive feedback is much easier, of course. People saying, "Oh, I loved your video here," and that's really nice. I love that. Don't stop doing that. That's nice. But questions, and especially critical, you go no, I didn't really understand why you would do this or so on. That would be. It would be very constructive to get more of that. But it increases the odds by doing it publicly, so that's good. And if you do more, I would love to see more of your educational content. You had some video guy with you sometime, was it? Then you post some really nice videos on your channel. Did you have a
so a friend that I met through the business named Bo Stilty. He is a full-time firefighter now, but prior to that was a videographer as his full-time profession. And so we just made contact randomly, and he came out and filmed some of the trainings that we've done. And obviously, as a videographer, his production was much higher than anything that we'd put together beforehand. Yeah. So yeah, he's great. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
It does really good work.
Yeah, no, when you like those, when he did, I know, shoot videos from the training, different camera angles, like I would go like, hell yeah, I can see an evolution here from different side angles and seeing like, that's awesome. But I know how much, because I do it in all of my burns. I collect a lot of that. Most of it is unprocessed on my hard drive because I never find the time to go back and put it to use. It's tremendously time consuming.
Yes, yes, it is. Especially if you don't know what you're doing.
But definitely. But like just taking multiple cameras, syncing them together, get rid of all the crap that happens before and after, select what's the most important thing to see of those 4 cameras, maybe make that bigger for that area, like, and make people understand it like you did. Maybe you did drawings and everything. This camera is here. Like, that shit takes time. So, and for no reward besides the reward itself. So I fully, but that, you should give him some credit. It was awesome done, and hope he does more.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
Have a good day, Ian.
You too. Have a good night. Sleep well, Lars.
I will. Bye-bye.
We'll talk sometime soon, I'm sure.